Chapter 1341, The Might of the Supreme Yang II. As a Purple Mansion realm immortal family, the Li family could only truly be called an immortal family when Li Ziming was present at the lake. Only then did everyone on the lake have confidence. Perhaps everyone had still been filled with worry just yesterday, yet once Li Ziming returned, even a single question from him was enough to put hearts at ease and change the entire atmosphere. Only then did they hear Li Ziming ask, "Have you encountered some trouble?" Li Ziming had made an agreement with Li Xiaowei back then and left behind several jade talismans, each carrying a different meaning. Although this one was merely to summon him back, the worry and tension in Li Ziming's heart were far from slight. The moment he received the message, he did not pause for even an instant, rushing back along the great void day and night without rest. When he reached the lake, he first used the immortal mirror to check the situation. It was only after seeing everyone waiting safely did he finally let out a breath and reveal himself. Li Zhongqian stepped out from the crowd and bowed as he said, "Taoist Master Tinglin and Taoist Master Qiu who have gone missing. The northern Buddhists have taken action. A Taoist master from the great Ziyuqi temple of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage has invited you to return and lend support." Ningguan has achieved the Purple Mansion. Li Ziming was first slightly surprised, then frowned and asked in doubt, "Tinglin has gone missing." Tinglin's many actions in the Outer Sea toward him could be considered decent, and she had also shown clear intent to protect the Li family during Li Ziming's disappearance. Although this favor was not particularly great, Li Ziming still had his eye on the radiance under heaven in her possession, so he only asked, "The Supreme Yang Dao lineage is so exalted, yet it still needs me to the point of summoning me back. I wonder which side the enemy is on." Li Zhongqian explained the matter in detail. Li Ziming listened while stroking his beard in silence, then sighed and said, "Tinglin and Qiu who are both friends of my family. Since Qiuqi has spoken like this, how could I have any reason not to go? My family faces Jiangbei and backs onto Jiangnan. We cannot possibly offend the Supreme Yang Dao lineage. No wonder you summoned me back." He considered the matter, but amid his helplessness, his eyes faintly lit up, and clarity dawned in his heart. This is an excellent destiny to obtain radiance under heaven. The key does not lie with Qiuqi, but with Tinglin and Qiuhu. This is likely a favor that yields benefits on three fronts. No matter what, the Supreme Yang Dao lineage has countless trump cards. A Dao lineage left behind by a true monarch would not lack one or two golden core level methods. Immortal cultivators are not Buddhist cultivators. As long as retreat can be ensured at any time and no excessive trouble is brought upon oneself, the gains from this trip will be considerable. He glanced at Li Xuanxuan and said, "The grudges of our forebears must be remembered. Daisy is already a mortal enemy of my family. We have formed the karmic entanglement of the 18 Buddhists, something that can never be erased. Either our family will beat him back to the north and perhaps eliminate him one day, or he will kill me. There is no room for doubt in this." Moreover, with the prior relationship involving Tinglin and Ningguan, it is not strange that he would come looking for me. Li Ziming fell into silent contemplation. Li Zhongqian then performed a bow and said softly, "That is exactly so. In this junior's view, this matter is not a bad thing. Daisy is an enemy of our family. We can neither withstand his attention nor eliminate him relying on our family alone. He is not alone in the blissland of the Emptiness Dao, since Zhelu stands behind him. The 18 Buddhists are a loss to the Emptiness Dao. Although Zhelu's hatred toward our family is not as deep as Daisy's, destiny is still tied to him. The Emptiness Dao is not the wrathful Dao. This matter may remain hidden and unspoken, but it is entirely possible for them to strike out of the blue, persecuting my family in pursuit of the karmic retribution spoken of by Buddhist cultivators, and ultimately giving rise to the Merciful One. The current matter in the north is precisely a rare opportunity. It is a chance to hang the enmity between our family and Emptiness Dao onto the great tree of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage." Several people nodded thoughtfully as he finished. Li Qiuan said in a contemplative tone, "What elder brother means is that as long as we can severely wound Daisy this time, it would be extremely beneficial, since new hatred would bury the old and the conflict between the Supreme Yang Dao lineage and the Emptiness Dao would intensify, all the while solidifying our family's ties with Purple Smoke Gate and the Ning family." "Oh, correct," Li Zhongqian bowed and said, "If the Taoist master had not returned this time, with the Emptiness Dao surging menacingly in the north, and us offending the Supreme Yang Dao lineage in the south, destroying ties on many fronts, how would our family have any room left to stand independently in Jiangnan? Moreover, the Supreme Yang Dao lineage is proud and the great Ziyuqi temple aloof. Once this matter passes, our family will have legitimate grounds to seek aid from the Supreme Yang Dao lineage when facing retaliation from the Emptiness Dao. When Father achieves his breakthrough, our standing will surely be even more secure." Kainlizi had spoken earnestly at length, yet Li Zhongqian had not wavered in the slightest. That Li Jianqian dared to summon Li Ziming back, based on only a few words from Kueki, meant that he had his own calculations all along. Li Ziming merely stroked his chin and nodded, thinking to himself, this matter does not fear a disparity between enemy and ally. The only concern is formations and ambushes. Fortunately, I carry the Immortal Mirror. Once we reach the north, a single examination with the Immortal Mirror will expose many of the Buddhist cultivators' trump cards and ambushes. Indeed, he chuckled as he asked, how much impact have these matters in Jiangbei had on the family? Seeing his expression, Li Jianqian knew that Li Ziming had taken it to heart and replied respectfully, fortunately, there has been no major impact. He reported the matters before and after in full. Li Ziming nodded repeatedly as he listened and said with a smile, look at that. The cultivators of the capital Immortal Dao are simply inferior to our Moongaze, yet they have stirred things up into such a state. He praised Li Jianqian and swept his gaze over the members of the family. Li Qian had only just broken through to the Foundation establishment realm, and her cultivation would not change in the short term. Li Jianqian's cultivation had clearly advanced greatly, and he could attempt to push toward the mid-stage, while Li Minggong had only recently reached the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm. The key point was that none of the people present should have taken a talisman pill. Li Jianqian was not far from the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm. If he could break through and then take the pill, he should soon be able to touch the threshold of the late Foundation establishment realm, and it would not easily arouse suspicion. Moreover, Li Ziming had returned carrying the heavenly quintessence expelling pill. It is truly unfortunate that Minggong has already broken through to the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and it is unclear how this pill should be taken after a breakthrough. I will have to ask Tinglin later. This Purple Mansion Realm pill, when taken by someone at the Foundation establishment realm, will certainly cause a great surge in cultivation. With the addition of a talisman pill, we can at least first bring one of our own direct descendants to the late Foundation establishment realm. If Li Chenghui had not died, he would certainly be at the late Foundation establishment realm by now. But at present, they could only push Li Minggong forward first. She had only just broken through to the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and taking a pill like this would normally be extremely dangerous. Fortunately, the talisman pill had no aftereffects and could even consolidate one's cultivation. Only by first taking this pill could such rapid progress be achieved. He tapped the table, taking it as a way of settling the matter, and said, then it is settled. Have Kui Juyan come over and accompany me on a trip to the great Ziyukui temple. We will see how many people Kueki can rally. You need not disclose the news of my return. For now, simply observe and wait. Chapter 1342, Joining Forces I. Linen Prefecture. The territory of the great Ziyukui temple lay against the mountains and beside the sea. It was covered in rolling hills and was almost completely cut off from the outside world. The mountains were covered with temples and shrines. Even though the cultivators within these temples could not even leave Linen Prefecture, this Dao lineage still followed ancient conventions, allowing 100 schools to flourish, each governing itself. A wisp of radiant light drifted south toward the central mountain range in the pitch-black night. It floated above dense forests until it came across the mountain gate of the great Ziyukui temple. The radiant light seemed slow yet was actually swift. It quickly condensed before the mountain gate, transforming into a man in white golden robes with a calm expression. A refined scholar stood respectfully at his side. Li Ziming glanced at the stele standing before the mountain gate, upon which two black words were written in a fierce, unrestrained style, Tiger Barbarian. There was no signature beneath the characters, and they even seemed somewhat dim. Beneath the stele waited a young man in black robes. Upon seeing him, the youth bowed and said respectfully, "Are you Taoist Master Zheajing of Moongaze? My Taoist master instructed me to wait at the mountain gate to welcome your immortal carriage." Li Ziming gave a slight nod. Kui Juyan stepped forward and said with a smile, "Please." The young man led them further inside. Only then did they see the large words at the center of the mountain gate. Dehang Kam Si. The base pillars of the mountain gate still remained on either side of the mountain gate. The vertical plaques that should have hung on either side were nowhere to be found, leaving only two pedestals of extraordinary material, from which hung two dim golden lamps. Li Ziming took one look and began to ponder inwardly. He had been to 9 mounds before, where the mountain gate bore the words 9 Daos of Supreme Mound. Now that he saw this Teheng Kamsi, he understood the implication. Perhaps it is similar to the Tongxuan Dao lineage. That Dao lineage likes to prefix everything with the character Chuan. The Supreme Yang and Supreme Yin are of the same family, so taking the character Tai is also reasonable. But as for the Azure Pond sect, I have never heard of such a mountain gate. That is rather strange. Asking about where the plaques on either side had gone would have been awkward, so he could only pretend not to notice. They continued inward as ancient stone bricks lined both sides. Dao banners fluttered, snow gradually appeared, and upon reaching the highest point, they unexpectedly saw several Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators chopping firewood, sweeping snow, and tending the fields. At the summit of a Dao lineage of this level, space was usually never sufficient. They would often wish to carve out more land for disciples to enter secluded cultivation, yet there were several tea trees planted here instead, with no spiritual qi to speak of. They were all mortal plants. Upon seeing Li Ziming, the group of Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators stopped to pay their respects, then immediately turned back to their farm work, scattering firewood all over the ground. Two Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators dressed as menial workers hurried over to gather it up. Hui Juyan had kept his head lowered as he followed Li Ziming, but when he saw this, he quickly went ahead to clear the way. After only a few steps, they arrived at the hall, where a black-robed Taoist master was brewing tea in the snow and said with a smile, "Zheajing, you arrived at just the right time." Li Ziming had always known that the Ziyuqi Dao Gate was aloof, but he had not known they were aloof to this extent. Hui Juyan brushed the snow off the seat for him. Li Ziming accepted the tea, sat down, and said with a smile, "You must be Senior Huiqi. I have long heard of your great name and hope for your guidance." Huiqi waved his hand and replied, "Zheajing coming to lend support is something our Ziyuqi Dao Gate should thank you for. How could I speak of giving guidance?" Seeing Li Ziming nod, the Taoist master finally brushed the snow from his robe and said with a smile, "In earlier years, when the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven fell, our family also gained something from it. We obtained a treasure pill from within, something of bright yang. Our family does not practice this Dao. In a few days, we will send it over to Zheajing as a small token of thanks." Benefit had always been the most persuasive. Huiqi offered a pill the moment he arrived, and Li Ziming did not refuse, smiling as he spoke, "Many thanks, Senior." When the two spoke of the fall of the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven, the one who felt the deepest pain was undoubtedly Hui Juyan. His ancestral grotto heaven had been carved up amongst others, and the Hui family had not even been given the chance to ask a single question. The desolation in his heart was easy to imagine. For now, he could only keep his head lowered, silent. Li Ziming saw his turmoil and gestured for him to withdraw first. Zai Huiqi exhaled deeply and said seriously, "This pill was examined back then by Taoist Master Yuando. It is a bright yang purple mansion realm spirit pill. Once a single pill enters the body, it can nourish the Dharma body and suppress curse injuries. If one cultivates and recuperates properly, it should be able to enhance quite a few divine abilities. It is truly remarkable. Only a few ancient pills could surpass it." Clearly, by presenting such a pill, Huiqi implied that any injuries suffered by Li Ziming in the coming great battle could be restored by this single pill. It was an assurance that the matter would not delay his cultivation. Quite a bit, if Li Ziming had heard this years ago, he would surely have been overjoyed, but having grown accustomed to fine things overseas, and having just taken a pill to increase his cultivation, it was not suitable to take another now, leaving him somewhat disappointed as he thought, "It is still decent. The remaining 2 spirit pills were not meant to increase cultivation anyway. Having this as a substitute saves wasting them. As for healing injuries, I have my own methods." He sighed inwardly. Though he smiled, there was little emotion behind it. Huiqi felt a stir in his heart as he took in his guest's expression. It seems Li Ziming's alchemical attainment is not shallow. He is certainly not some half-baked purple mansion realm cultivator if spirit pills of this sort cannot move him. Whether it could move Li Ziming was one matter. With the bearing of the great Ziyuqi temple, since they had invited someone to engage in a battle of techniques, this pill was the bare minimum. Huiqi stroked his beard and said, "Purple mansion realm divine abilities are difficult to cultivate. Zheajing, take a look at this." He slipped a golden box from his sleeve and casually opened it. Inside lay a disc-shaped treasure, entirely golden in hue, engraved with runes of the 8 directions. A circle of pale, intricate curse patterns ran along the edge of its front, pulsing with a breathing rhythm. Its center blazed with a brilliant golden radiance, as though a sun had fallen into the box. A bright yang spirit artifact. This was something Li Ziming could not remain unmoved by. His eyes immediately burned with desire, and he cursed inwardly, "What a great Ziyuqi temple. I cannot even find a trace of such a spirit artifact, yet he keeps it in his sleeve like a common cabbage. A lineage that was once wealthy is truly different." Desire aside, a spirit artifact was incomparably precious. This Taoist master could not possibly take it out just to give it away for nothing. Though Li Ziming was exceedingly tempted, he only exclaimed aloud, "A fine treasure." Huiqi raised his head slightly and replied with a smile, "This is the Surging Yang Star Command Treasure Disc, a spirit artifact. It is one of the registered treasures in our Ziyuqi collection, an excellent spirit artifact that combines offense and defense. For this coming great battle with the Buddhist cultivators, Zhejiang may take it first. Li Ziming could hardly tear his eyes away as he listened to Qiuqi continue. The front is the surging Yang star command diagram. It can release bright Yang killing light with the heavenly radiant star as its lead. When held upright, its might is boundless. If it is rotated downward with the heavenly radiant star below and the Yang apex star above, and held inverted, it can cause the stars to fall into disorder, granting the ability to break free from danger and escape peril. He could not help but sigh as he replied, "This disc was crafted by Su Jun and Chen Xuanli. It represented the Ning state acknowledging Wei orthodoxy and using the Wei calendar. It was once the heirloom treasure of the Su family of Jiangbei. Later, when the Su family was destroyed, this item eventually made its way into the hands of our Ziyuqi temple." Li Ziming nodded inwardly. Qiuqi smiled as though nothing were amiss and hinted, "I have heard that this spirit artifact draws upon the imagery of severed crimson arrowhead and sovereign in peril. Not only are its divine abilities formidable, it is also of great help in cultivation. When the fighting begins in the north, Zhejiang can experience it for yourself." He smiled. The radiant fire convergence is fierce, neither exhausted nor overflowing, holding fire in its orthodox position, neither pill nor artifact. Though Eastern fire is powerful, it ultimately does not match others in the Taos of pills and artifacts. Setting spirit treasures aside, the spirit artifacts that fell from the grotto heaven back then were in truth inferior to this one. Chapter 1343, Joining Forces, II. Li Ziming lifted the spirit artifact disc with both hands, examining it with great fondness. He flipped it over to find a back as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the heavy snow falling from the sky above. "If I could study it a bit." Li Ziming still had a very long road ahead before reaching sovereign in peril and severed crimson arrowhead, but how could he not covet a bright Yang spirit artifact? However, since it was said to be a registered item, it was not easy to bring up. He smiled and said, "Truly formidable." Hearing a single sentence from Senior Qiuqi surpasses reading 10 years of Tao collections. This was not mere flattery. That description of radiant fire alone was testament to the other party's level. Li Ziming infused the spirit artifact with his divine ability and muttered inwardly, "After we fight, I will see the might of this spirit artifact and then test his tone. If the price is something I cannot afford, I can still try to obtain a spirit artifact from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven. Having one in hand is always better than having none." He had only just begun to ponder when he saw an elderly man walking through the snow. The man wore gray robes and carried a sword on his back. A gentle expression rested on an ordinary face. When he landed on the platform, he cupped his hands in greeting, "Fellow Taoist Qiuqi." This person appeared somewhat honest and plain. If not for his cultivated divine abilities and the aura he carried, one might not even think him remarkable. He first paid his respects to Qiuqi, then turned and said, "Taoist Master Zhejiang, we finally meet at last." This man was none other than Chen Yin, the Taoist master of the Yuyang Prefecture Chen family, one of the 3 immortal families of Yue State, known as Taoist Master Yushui. This Taoist master was even older than Xiao Shooting. He had cultivated 2 divine abilities and was quite renowned for his swordsmanship. Li Ziming quickly rose and performed a formal salute, "Greetings, Senior." When Chen Yin achieved the Purple Mansion realm, the Li family was likely still nothing more than a small landowning household. This address of Senior was entirely sincere. Chen Yin turned slightly to the side and smiled meaningfully, "We should have met long ago." Li Ziming felt deeply moved and nodded as he said, "Indeed, when I was able to advance to the Purple Mansion realm, Chen Xunyu of your esteemed family also lent his support. I have remembered this matter. Our 2 families have always been on the same path." Li Ziming's radiant skystone had been obtained from Wang Fu, and Chen Yin had sent Chen Xunyu to assist at the time. Although it was merely a struggle of interests and could not be said to stem from goodwill toward the Li family, now that the Chen family was at odds with the Chengxiao Gate, they were undoubtedly a potential ally of the Li family. Chen Yin sighed and said, "Xunyu is a rare talent in our family. He is currently in seclusion and has yet to break through. Who knows how many years it will take before it ends." Qiuqi smiled and waited for the 2 to finish reminiscing. He then withdrew his gaze and stood up, as Chen Yin said gravely, "I have already inquired. Taoist Master Zhosheng of the southern border is not in residence, but Taoist friend Luo was very enthusiastic and has already gone to Jiangbei." Qiuqi was slightly surprised and replied, "Taoist Master Zhosheng will indeed find it inconvenient because of that northern Dan family, but that Luo fellow actually dares to come. Very well then, since he has the guts, all the better. Those devil cultivators only follow the wind and are of little real use." By referring to him in this way, it was clear that the other party was not someone who followed the orthodox Tao, and in Qiuqi's mind, was of the same despised sort as Zhugong. One had to know that the Li lineage could be traced back to imperial descendants of an immortal dynasty and was now a renowned orthodox Dao house. It was only after generations of fighting and dying against Buddhist cultivators that they earned Qiuqi's gentle regard. How could some unknown devil cultivator possibly be worthy of his notice? For this very reason, even though the other party had come to offer support, he did not dare approach the gates of the great Ziyuqi temple. Instead, he had run off early to wait in Jiangbei, clearly harboring no small amount of fear and caution. Chen Yin shook his head. It is nothing more than trying to curry favor with Taoist Master Qiuhu and urgently needing the Si family's Dao lineage. Those who go barefoot fear nothing from those wearing shoes. When the time comes, he can simply slip south, and even the emptiness Dao will have no way to deal with him. Qiuqi nodded to show that he understood. Li Ziming could not help but ask, Senior Hufu. Qiuqi shook his head as he replied, when true monarchs clash, it is the land below that suffers. The land of Shu has been struck by great drought, and the Western Plateau devil cultivators are moving east again. Originally, this matter had nothing to do with us, but those Western Plateau devil cultivators are descendants of Lesser Yang. Our supreme Yang Dao lineage holds the Lesser Yang branch and has long had the rule of taking turns to guard the Western Plateau. Now it is Ziyuqi's turn, and our family has the spare capacity. Hufu must go and cannot be moved lightly. He was clearly somewhat pressed for time. As soon as he finished speaking, his expression turned solemn. Time is tight, so I will not say much. This time we have invited fellow Taoist Ling Mei to anchor the formation. Several Taoist masters in Jiangbei will also judge the situation and come to lend support. We are bringing our Ziyuqi spirit artifact over. We must kill a few of the merciful ones to raise the banner. His expression gradually turned cold as he growled. Back then, a battle broke out when the Buddhist cultivators entered Sioux State. The Yue cultivating sect fought them until they cried for their parents and schemed to eliminate Jingjin, who was the most eager to head south. Only then did they restrain themselves for several decades. In the struggle between north and south, several Mahas suffered losses without shedding blood, and now they dare to push their luck. If we do not smash the dog brains out of these Buddhist cultivators, they will ride right over the heads of all the Dao lineages in Jiangnan. He stepped forward and flew into the great void, his face dark. The two followed closely behind. Li Ziming silently glanced at Chen Yin, the Taoist master Yushui. The old man lowered his eyelids and seemed to let out an almost imperceptible sigh. Jiangbei. Dark clouds filled the sky, and the torrential rain continued to pour without pause. The longer it rained, the more terrifying it became. The White River stream fared somewhat better, but the White Yi and White Sea creeks downstream breached their banks and changed course several times. No one knew how many commoners had died. It was only because the great river flowed east, and Lake Xi'an was connected with the eastern sea that the water levels stayed steady enough, allowing Jiangnan to remain unaffected. As the Purple Mansion realm cultivators traveled northward, they found the lands along White Yi Stream littered with floating corpses. The sight made Qiuqi's face darken, his mood seemingly worsening. After quite some time, he finally said, "What a calamity. Jiangbei was once so densely populated. Now not a single household can be seen in these desolate lands. Aside from a few great families, there are hardly any commoners left." The two naturally did not dare respond. Once they crossed into the territory of Mount Zioshi, they did not reveal their presence. Qiuqi took out several ink-black jade talismans and performed a calculation with his fingers. He signaled Chen Yin with a glance, who crushed the talismans, clearly summoning the Taoist masters who had come to lend support. Qiuqi continued to deduce with his divine ability, as if covertly observing. He let out a breath and turned, speaking in a low voice. "We will certainly encounter Daisy first. Leave him to Senior Yushui. A sword cultivator is always more efficient against him. As for the merciful ones, leave them to Zheajing. One has already been eliminated by Zhugong. There should still be 4 remaining. There is no need to consider that Luo fellow. Zhelu will definitely send people out. Unless he acts personally, there is nothing to fear." He finished with utmost seriousness. "Only beware of the 3 retributions world entering Lotus. This treasure artifact is no longer what it once was. After years of refinement, even I could fall victim to it if careless. Always hold back 1 or 2 measures of strength." Chapter 1344, Suppress I. Fellow Taoists. Just as he finished speaking, a figure appeared in the great void. His hair was completely gray, and he wore black robes covered in countless brown circular patterns of varying sizes, like eyes, that faintly emitted dark light within the great void. It was clearly the Taoist master Luo, who had been mentioned earlier. He first paid his respects to Qiuqi, his expression respectful, and said with a smile, "Greetings, my lord." Qiuqi nodded coldly, then turned to Chen Yin, who was clearly much more familiar with him, and said with a smile, "We have not met for many years. Fellow Taoist, your cultivation has improved again. Chen Yin was clearly not like Kueki and returned the smile amicably. Only then did Taoist Master Luo turn toward Li Ziming. The eye-like patterns all over his clothing trembled as he said enthusiastically, "So this is the famous Taoist Master Zhejiang. I have long heard of fellow Taoists' deeds, truly impressive." Li Ziming responded courteously. After all, one does not strike a smiling face. At the same time, he found the man's clothing rather eerie and avoided looking at it directly. At the same time, Kuki's cold voice sounded in his ears through a divine ability. "Zhejiang, this Luo fellow also came from Yue State. He is no good sort. He consorted with demonic creatures in the southern border and ruled the Shaman kingdom. Every year, capable barbarian cultivators were refined into his clothing. Be cautious. There is no need to worry about him." Turning to the Buddhists. "The demon kings detest him deeply, and he has also killed the merciful one. Just minimize contact." Only then did Li Ziming understand where that eerie feeling came from. Upon further examination, this Taoist master surnamed Luo seemed to be a Mount Yue tribesman. He thought, the same disposition as Fu Demu from the lake back then, who refined the mountain of human heads, and Chen Yin actually dared to invite him here. It seems he must be holding some leverage. No wonder Kueki's expression was icy. With such a Dharma robe draped on his body, it would be strange if Kueki showed him any kindness. As probably only because the materials came from the southern border barbarians that Kueki found him slightly less repulsive. Otherwise, he might have called for a kill on sight order. This person is truly testing others on the edge of their blades. Taoist Master Luo was cowed somewhat by Kueki's icy expression, yet he remained all smiles with a flawless enthusiasm. When Kueki finished his divination, a hazy multicolored light indeed emerged from the great void, as if a black cloth had been lifted, revealing a field of gold beneath. Kueki recognized it with a single glance. He said softly, "This is the Huixu demon subduing grand formation. Zhelu is personally suppressing it from within. It should have been held back by the purple throne serene spirit pavilion or the rain-viewing precious cauldron. This grand formation is presided over by a Maha and aided by a spirit artifact. It can remain concealed within the great void, yet it has a formation core manifested in the present world. Restraining those few and shaking it will suffice." He had mentioned two treasures in one breath. Li Ziming recalled that Tinglin still possessed the upper minister vessel and boundless water fire. If those were brought out, even a Maha would likely retreat. No wonder the people before him were unconcerned. The light in Kuki's hand withdrew, and he turned back to instruct them. "All of you present here are protected by my spirit artifact. As long as you do not move, those below will be unable to divine the people within the great void. When the timing is right, make your move." The rainwater beneath their feet on Mount Zyaoshi dissipated, revealing traces of multicolored Buddhist soil, as Kueki spoke softly, "Wait here while I go first." He manifested atop Mount Zyaoshi, and finally saw the golden light sway gently. Before he could react, a horse-headed Maha leapt out from within, his face full of smiles, revealing large white buckteeth as he called out, "Fellow Taoist Kueki, whom have you invited here?" The three of them restrained themselves and remained motionless within the great void. Li Ziming's gaze sharpened as he thought, "So this is Daisy, my family's blood feud." Sure enough, as soon as Daisy appeared, Kuki's expression turned fierce. He raised the great Kui Convergence bronze sword in his hand without saying a word. A resonant echo rang out from the great void, and four golden-bodied merciful ones emerged, each holding a Dharma artifact. Chen Yin rose with his sword and vanished from sight. Below, Daisy's smile froze, his horse ears snapping upright as if listening. A flash of silver light burst forth as a slender sword tore through the air, appearing behind his head with fierce sword radiance. He snarled, "Chen Yin." Daisy's Dharma body rapidly expanded in midair. He no longer sat cross-legged, but rode multicolored light as he flew upward, a purple-black ritual bowl flashing as he sought to block the sword. Chen Yin was no ordinary figure. His slender sword lightly tapped the bowl, and the roar of surging waters arose between heaven and earth. The Kongsijiang demon bowl hummed violently as white rain poured from the sky, causing Daisy's Dharma body to sizzle with sharp hissing sounds. Daisy immediately withdrew, raising the Kongsijiang demon bowl to receive and gather the waters from above. He lifted his staff to counter Chen Yin's sword techniques, thinking in doubt, isn't Chen Yin on the southern border? Wasn't he locked in a tense struggle with Taoist Master Zhosheng of Shawang Kingdom over a spirit artifact? Chengxiao Gate has shown no movement. How would the Chen family dare cross the river? Kueki did not fear Daisy, but Daisy was also confident in dealing with him. Mahajelu had long said that Taoist Master Yushui, Chen Yin, was on good terms with Hengzhu Dao Gate and should not intervene. He was also embroiled in disputes in the southern border with Taoist Master Zhosheng of Shawang Kingdom and under pressure from Taoist Master Luo as well. He had every excuse to decline. how could he cross the river? The sword gate clung to tradition. Though Ling Mei was an exception, acting was still fraught with difficulty. Only Li Ziming had displayed a firm stance, yet he had been driven to the Eastern Sea. Chang Xiao's whereabouts were unknown. How could he show himself? That was why he had remained outside the formation to face the enemy. Now that Chen Yin had appeared, Daisy immediately sensed disaster. While urgently calling for reinforcements, he shouted, "Stop him at once." The four merciful ones at the side felt their breath catch. Blocking Zhu Gong was one thing, but how could Qi be compared to her? It was not merely a matter of two extra divine abilities. Even if all of Zhu Gong's possessions were combined, they would not equal a single spirit artifact of Qi's. Qi was also a Taoist master of the great Ziyuqi temple. His abilities were far beyond simple. Clashes of Dharma bodies. Ziyuqi was known as one of the ancient three shaman Daos. Total annihilation of both body and soul was entirely possible when they fought. Yet with Amaha giving the order, how could the four refuse? They could only steel themselves and advance, each seemingly more timid than the last, as if they might self-destruct their Dharma bodies and flee at any moment. As expected, a cold light flashed across Qi's face. Judging that Daisy still had a hidden move, he did not rush to summon Li Ziming and the others. Instead, he raised the great Qi Convergence bronze sword and swung it down. At the same time, a massive black wind surged forth, shredding the multicolored light around the four merciful ones, golden bodies. A black cord dropped from midair like a venomous serpent lurking in the night and suddenly sprang upward. All four felt a chill at their necks. The leading elder merciful one had already retreated into Buddhist soil, completely at a loss. Only the six-armed merciful one with the greatest combat strength roared and charged forward, yet he was snared and hoisted into the air by the black cord. The bronze-textured great Qi Convergence bronze sword flickered in and out of view within the gray wind, as a low shout rang out, "Freeze." A point of cold light leaped up within the black wind. The remaining three merciful ones retreated faster than one another, as Qi scattered and reformed, erupting forward in an instant. A massive hand suddenly condensed within the black wind, gripping the neck of a golden-bodied merciful one. Another hand drove the great Qi Convergence bronze sword straight down into the opponent's skull, then twisted with force like slaughtering a sacrificial offering. No one knew what divine ability he employed, but the merciful one let out a heart-rending howl. Qi's expression did not flicker as the whites of his eyes grew increasingly prominent. A merciful one who has cultivated for decades, bringing along three worthless novices, actually dares to block my path. Do you truly think each of you is like Nuzi or Minghui beneath the lotus throne? Zhu Gong had no experience fighting northern Buddhists, but how could Qi lack it? He had struck with full force right from the start, simultaneously employing two spirit artifacts and three divine abilities. He did not loosen his grip on the great Qi Convergence bronze sword. The merciful one screamed as pain drilled down to his bones, yet was further bound by the black cord that had now wrapped itself around him. The remaining three were terrified as they heard Qi laugh. The clever ones sacrificed themselves early and returned to Buddhist land to avoid facing my great Qi Convergence bronze sword. Only you four fools stayed behind, waiting for death. These words had an immense impact. Not only did the remaining three merciful ones choke simultaneously, but even Daisy's expression changed. The one suffering the wrath of the great Qi Convergence bronze sword was finally driven out of his wits by pain and terror. Nothing mattered more than survival. Countless golden lights and cracks instantly appeared across his golden body. Boom! The treasure light surged skyward and spread through the smoke, displaying a dazzling array of colors. But Qi had already retreated using body divine abilities. He coughed twice, burst into loud laughter, and cursed, "Fool." Ziyuqi Dao was strange, with only a few methods that could kill outright in combat. This saved Qi another hidden trump card. The remaining three, utterly confused and terrified out of their wits, hesitated as Qi raised his sword and struck at the golden light. Boom! The golden light trembled violently, as if something immense had been disturbed. Brilliant radiance faintly descended from the heavens, with drifting clouds appearing. It was clear that those within the formation had been alerted. Daisy's face turned extremely ugly, and he could only shout loudly, "Pai Jia." A streak of multicolored light finally descended from midair. Faint illusions of men and women of various kinds sitting opposite one another appeared, accompanied by the roaring of jackals fighting. A golden Dao body fell from within, half its face filled with hatred and jealousy, the other half vacant and forlorn, inspiring fear at a glance. The Dao of Great Desire, Pai Jia. Qi finally turned serious, staring coldly at the golden body before him. During the northern and southern conflict, Daisy had only been in his second life. The emptiness Dao had gained many benefits from that conflict. Now, after so many years, Daisy had reached his third reincarnation and was already troublesome. He could hold off a mid-stage Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, but the one before Kyuiki had undergone 5 reincarnations and was far stronger. The half-face turned toward him and spoke in a humming voice. "Fellow Taoist Kyuiki, I do not wish to be deeply involved in this matter. We also have no intention of endangering the lives of the 2 Taoist masters. This is merely to prevent divine abilities from being used to manipulate Jiangbei and cause needless casualties. If you withdraw now, it will be an act of accumulating virtue and merit." Kyuiki now understood that Paijia clearly did not wish to be overly involved. Purple Smoke Gate had joined forces with the Azure Pond sect back then to seize his Qi Wang's profound heaven hearing. Now karma had come full circle. If Kyuiki crossed the Purple Mansion realm threshold with 4 divine abilities and his full set of spirit artifacts, Paijia would turn and leave without hesitation. But since Paijia's strength was enough to suppress him, he had stepped in. Kyuiki shook his head, raising the great Kyui Convergence bronze sword and sneering. "I have never tested the divine abilities of a 5 lives Maha. Today, I shall ask for some instruction." At this moment, Kyuiki had only one option, to hold Paijia back. At present, only he could contend with this 5-life Maha. He began to feel fortunate that he had not revealed himself too early. If they had appeared together, the opponent would certainly have sent this Maha to deal with Chen Yin, while Daisy held him back. That would have spelled major trouble. Fortunately, he had seized the initiative and avoided the worst outcome. The Chen family is on good terms with Hangzhou Dao Gate. In principle, Paijia would not want to incur excessive enmity and karma, so he will only deal with me. Still, one must always guard against the unexpected. Thus his gaze grew heavy as he summoned his spirit artifact. Seeing this, Daisy withdrew from Chen Yin's sword light and gradually gained the upper hand, smiling as he said, "Surnamed Lin, you are nothing special." Chapter 1345, Suppress II. Kyuiki said nothing. Suddenly, the golden light flickered as a sinister beast bone dagger descended from the great void and smashed into it, kicking up a wave of energy. At the same time, a man in a pale golden Taoist robe appeared. Heavenly light shimmered between his brows as a snow-white, dazzling beam of heavenly radiance, hidden light, carrying intense purple fire, burst forth from the great void and struck the golden light with overwhelming force. Buzz! The golden light immediately began to flicker between bright and dim. Only then did the 3 merciful ones realize and rush closer, just in time to see a gray-haired man clad in black robes patterned with countless eye-like spots appear. He held a small white jade hammer and struck the blade hilt with a clear ding. Clang! Taoist Master Luo truly had real skill. The golden light shivered as it was forced to reveal its true form. It was an 8-armed Dharma wheel, entirely golden, hollow at the center, and inlaid with all kinds of precious gems. Yet this single strike seemed to disturb something more. A chorus of chanting arose within the great void, and 3 golden-bodied merciful ones emerged from the formation. The leader even had an eye growing between his brows and carried great authority. All 3 wore calm expressions as they shouted, "Vile demon." An old demon like Taoist Master Luo would never suffer such a loss. He had prepared long ago and transformed into a gust of gray wind the instant the hammer fell, causing the 3 merciful ones to grasp at empty air. Li Ziming was farther away. When he saw 3 golden bodies suddenly appear, he immediately rode his light away, purple flames trailing behind him to block the radiance shining toward him. Daisy still had enough leeway while dueling Chen Yin to observe the situation. When he saw a bright Yang cultivator appear, he felt both shocked and confused and cried out in alarm, "Li Ziming. He has returned from the outer sea. Where is Chang Xiao?" The expressions of the 3 merciful ones changed almost simultaneously. 7 eyes across their 3 golden bodies all turned toward Li Ziming at once, filled with strange astonishment and even a tinge of greed. Without prior agreement, all 3 abandoned the gray wind and pursued Li Ziming's position. "Remnants of Wei and Lei, barely clinging to life, and you still dare come north. Hurry and meet your death." Daisy had been watching the situation closely. The appearance of Taoist Master Luo nearly made his jaw drop, and realization finally dawned on him. Damn it, these cultivators really know how to act. Fortunately, the retreating Taoist Master Luo was being blocked by his own merciful ones, allowing the Maha to breathe a sigh of relief. Only then did he look toward Li Ziming. Unlike the excitement of those 3 merciful ones, Daisy felt a chill the moment he saw their expressions. He cultivates the heaven-venerating gate. Merciful ones are already clumsy by nature, and these 3 fools have not even reached the enlightened wisdom seat. They are actually charging straight at him. Forget it. Even if they cannot gain the upper hand, it will be enough to hold that radiant pass back. This was Li Ziming's first time fighting a merciful one. Unable to gauge the strength of those behind him, he merely flicked his sleeve and rode light and flame forward. Heavenly light surged between his brows as the heavenly radiance, hidden light, lit up once again. The brilliant heavenly radiance, hidden light, did not strike the three-eyed merciful one at the center. Instead, it shifted slightly and shot like a streak of light toward the merciful one, who was a step slower, forcing him to raise his sword to meet it. Sizzle! Flames burst apart. Li Ziming's heavenly radiance, hidden light, cultivated for many years, precisely struck the flat of the opponent's Dharma sword. It deflected slightly and, unlike before, did not dissipate but instead rebounded and shot toward the opponent's face. The merciful one only had time to tightly shut his eyes and lower his head slightly, using his cheek to receive the heavenly radiance, hidden light. The bright white glow barely pierced his left cheek, melting a finger-sized hole through it. Li Ziming gained a bit more confidence. The leader is hard to judge, but the two on either side are clumsy. Without Purple Mansion Realm divine abilities supporting them, their only advantage is a tougher Dharma body. They are not even as good as Fuxia from the lake back then. In Li Ziming's view, these so-called golden bodies were only slightly stronger than Purple Mansion Realm cultivators who specialized in techniques and divine abilities. They were about on par with himself. If Fuxia's wrathful manifestation had not died back then, he would have been among the top merciful ones and naturally beyond comparison. With his confidence greatly increased, Li Ziming raised his hand. A round bead appeared in his palm, engraved with the pattern of a fierce tiger turning its head. It was the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger. Soft, thread-like earthen yellow light immediately emerged and stood before him like a painted screen, directly meeting the short staff hurled forward by the three-eyed merciful one. Thud. Mountain-charging profound veil had been of little use before Changxiao, but it held firm against this merciful one. Though its glow dimmed, it managed to withstand the blow. Li Ziming seized the moment and brought two fingers together before his lips, mobilizing his divine ability flames. Seeing his stance, the two opponents sought to prevent him from unleashing it freely, striking from front and back as they swung their weapons down at him. The mountain-charging profound veil blocked another sword strike and finally shattered. A golden hammer smashed down with overwhelming force, yet Li Ziming nudged himself aside with heavenly light. A pale yellow membrane seemed to form over his body, deflecting the Dharma artifact away. Only a slight ache spread through his wrist, and there was no real injury at all. This was precisely the second marvelous effect of the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, stable earth spirit absorption. Li Ziming urged his flames forward, parting his lips slightly as he exhaled a stream of fire. The flames were blazing red on the outside, while white streaked with gold within, and moved at terrifying speed. They bloomed midair and unfurled into gold, sweeping forward like a long whip woven of gold and crimson. The Purple Mansion Realm's spiritual flame, profound fire of the three phases, guard. The three immediately leapt back. Although the hammer wielder had managed to graze Li Ziming, he slowed by half a beat. The profound fire of the three phases guard struck his hammer first, swiftly engulfing it and exploding into a spray of sparks that fell onto his golden arm. Howl! The merciful one reappeared not far away, his arm engulfed in golden flames that burned holes of all sizes into it. The larger ones were as big as a dragon's eye, while the smaller ones looked like densely packed black dots that writhed endlessly. How could the three fail to understand? They reacted at once. We underestimated him. Purple Mansion Realm flames, our true fire. True fire was not like merging fire or radiant fire. It could not cling like a festering sore, nor could it persist for long, making the injuries easier to treat. However, it focused on explosive damage in an instant, and its power was tremendous. Even the golden hammer used to block it had its patterns burned into a blur, its strength clearly diminished. Li Ziming was taken by surprise, and a rush of mixed emotions surged through his heart. In the battles after he entered the Purple Mansion Realm, his opponents had either been mid-Purple Mansion Realm Taoist masters with 3 divine abilities, or late Purple Mansion Grand Taoist masters who had crossed the Purple Immortal Realm threshold. Every one of them had been a Daoxuan inheritor, beating him so badly that he had fled in panic and nearly lost his life. Now, having gained spirit flames, improved his cultivation, and prepared his trump cards, he was fighting merciful ones who were not even comparable to early Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. The shock hit him hard and instantly rebuilt his confidence. His eyes lit up. If the profound fire of the 3 phases, guard, was already like this, what about returning flame to completion? And what of the desire origin merging fire that the 9 Mounds Dao lineage once coveted? Li Ziming froze for just a moment, then seized the opportunity and stepped forward, light flaring once more at the center of his brows. The 3-eyed merciful one frowned slightly. This was clearly a troublesome opponent. the eye at his brow snapped open, sending out a beam of golden light to meet the heavenly light from Li Ziming's brow, while his other two hands swung their short staffs as he shouted, "Form the formation." The remaining two exhaled sharply, stepping onto multicolored clouds and taking their positions. Li Ziming still had the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc, leaving him perfectly calm as purple and gold flames flared in both his hands. The Supreme Yang Resonance, Radiant Art. This art had been inherited from Li Jianqian's talisman seed and was surpassed only by a select few spell arts in the Li family's possession. Having mastered it himself, Li Ziming immediately released radiant light from his hands to block their techniques, while the earthen yellow mountain charging profound veil lit up around him once again. Yet the three-eyed merciful one did not panic. All three spoke at once, spewing clouds of golden sand that filled the air. How could Li Ziming fear this? Spiritual flames, refined metal. Unless these monks could spit out purple mansion realm metal, who among them could withstand true fire? The profound fire of the three phases guard blossomed again, forming a ring before him that repelled the golden sand. Li Ziming controlled his heavenly light purple fire and struck toward the hammer wielding Merciful One once again. Unexpectedly, treasure light flared across the Merciful One's body, though it was neutralized by heavenly light, and the purple fire burned his torso until it overflowed with golden blood. He remained unmoved and continued spewing golden sand. Li Ziming immediately grew alert. A sweep of his spiritual sense revealed that the golden sand they were producing was indeed growing stronger. Looking up, he saw a wisp of multicolored light descending from the heavens and spreading deep into the great void. It seemed that they were drawing the radiance of Buddhist land through the great void as their formation took shape. "Hey!" Li Ziming showed no courtesy at all. He was even briefly stunned before letting out a cold laugh, thinking in his mind, forming a formation. Fine, you dare form this kind of formation in front of me, courting death." Golden light faintly lit his eyes. Howling winds erupted as a brilliant white heavenly gate etched with intricate patterns burst forth from the great void, wreathed in multicolored clouds. Banners fluttered as troops clad in golden armor and robes descended from the great void, illuminating the entire mountain range in blazing radiance and drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Heaven-venerating gates. The heaven-venerating gate divine ability struck with overwhelming force as it surged out from the multicolored clouds, like a mountain range that kept expanding and thrusting straight into the sky. It ground down their suppression and severed the circulation of their divine ability energy. The multicolored radiance above the three of them was pressed down in an instant. It did not last even 3 breaths before a thunderous explosion rang out. The links of multicolored light around the three were blasted apart, forcing the 3 ferocious-faced merciful ones to retreat a step in unison, with the 2 weaker ones coughing up golden dust. Boom! Multicolored clouds drifted as the clamor of troops resounded. The heaven-venerating gate stood towering amid the clouds, with the Taoist master clad in gold and white standing atop it. 2 enormous, intricately patterned white gate pillars pressed downward, pinning the 3 beneath the gate like ants. In the blink of an eye, offense and defense were reversed. Since the day I began cultivating this Tao, I have always been the one suppressing others. Is this heaven-venerating gate cultivated by me, Li Ziming, or by you 3 monks? You dare try to suppress me. Chapter 1346, Chilu I. The heaven-venerating gate was itself a manifest display of bright yang, majestic in bearing and dazzling in brilliance. If one spoke of sheer grandeur, no other art scene so far surpassed the heaven-venerating gate. A radiant pass descended to suppress all beneath it. It was vast as a mountain and shone in all directions, frightening the temple tenants of the north into worship and driving the common folk of the south to prostrate themselves. The 3 merciful ones struggled to move under the burden of mountains. Heavenly light shone downward as an unending force of refinement and suppression surged from the heavenly gate, pressing down layer upon layer. Li Ziming raised his hand again and brought it to his lips. Ho! Red and white shifted before finally transforming into the resplendent profound fire of the 3 phases guard, which cascaded downward toward the base of the heavenly gate. Blazing bright yang-purple flames surged alongside it, instantly turning the area into a sea of fire. The 3 were immediately drenched in sweat. Spots of golden lacquer flowed across their dharma bodies, dripping into the golden flames and quickly evaporating as they rose, causing the divine ability to suppress them even more firmly. But even more fatal, as the light of the Buddhist land in the sky was cut off, the wisp of multicolored radiance that protected their bodies and safeguarded their lives visibly weakened. Only the innate treasure light upon their dharma bodies continued to flicker, barely holding back the surging flames. No matter how miserable the 3 below appeared, Li Ziming sat steadily atop the radiant pass, a quiet realization forming in his heart. So this is why Taoist Master Kueki needed to call me back. It seems the heaven-venerating gate is particularly effective against the merciful ones, especially this refinement and suppression that cuts off divine ability energy. It strikes them right where it hurts. Every divine ability had its own strengths. The heaven-venerating gate was famed for refinement and suppression, although it could not grant Li Ziming the decisive power of Yehui or Changxia. Once the heaven-venerating gate gained the upper hand, it was like Mount Taishi itself, upright and imposing. The merciful ones, lacking true divine abilities of their own, were suppressed completely. The white heavenly gate continued to bear down with ever-increasing weight. The two merciful ones behind hurriedly looked to the one in the lead, and one said in a low voice, "Master Pingling, we juniors have only just ascended to the Buddhist land. Our faith is weak and our seats are low. We beg you to borrow the divine ability of the Buddhist land to preserve all our Dharma bodies." The three-eyed merciful one in front appeared hesitant. His condition was somewhat better, though sweat was still pouring down his body. While channeling mana together with the other two to resist the suppression, he watched golden lacquer drip from them amid the true fire. Gritting his teeth, he sent a thought transmission. "This divine ability is downright bizarre. Do you think I do not want to borrow it? You and I stand within the Buddhist land, so our pleas can naturally reach it, but its light may not necessarily descend. I am not under the golden lotus throne or endowed with enlightenment. Where would I get such immense faith energy?" The two were not fully convinced, their faces betraying looks of doubt. After all, if the fire continued to burn without pause, Pingling might last until reinforcements arrived, but the two of them likely would not. Understanding that he did not want to bear the cost alone, they could only say softly, "We are willing to lend the master our aid." Joy appeared on Pingling's face, but before the words were fully spoken, a brilliant white beam of light burst through the flames. Using the overhead radiant light as cover, it darted forward like a venomous snake. The hammer-wielding merciful one only had time to raise his Dharma artifact before letting out a cry of pain. Oh! His iron golden eyes were struck by the light, and his left eye instantly exploded into a spray of golden powder. The three merciful ones dared not hesitate and simultaneously formed seals to cast their arts. The three-eyed Pingling urgently chanted, "The boundless of the eight directions are all illusions. Right and wrong are all empty thoughts. Under the illumination of treasure light lies inconceivable merit. Only our Buddhist land seeks true proof. This humble one earnestly beseeches divine ability." Li Ziming was urging his heaven-venerating gate to grow stronger and stronger when he suddenly raised his head and felt the great void tremble. It was as if a fragment of heaven and earth were drawing near to manifest in the world. Auspicious clouds appeared in the sky, and a wisp of multicolored light descended. The radiance was no larger than a human head, like a beam of light breaking through the clouds. It sought to fall upon someone, yet halted above the heaven-venerating gate, shining upon the divine ability instead. Li Ziming immediately frowned as a searing pain arose. The mountain-charging profound veil hurried to intercept it, only to find that the multicolored light was entirely unhindered. It was merely compressed smell. Lurer and smaller by the heaven-venerating gate's power of erosion and severance. By the time it passed through the radiant light, more than half of it had dissipated, and only then did it fall upon the head of the three-eyed merciful one. After receiving this light, the merciful one Pingling's eyes gleamed with brilliance as dense runes lit up across his body. 2 arms burst forth from his back, bracing against the base of the heaven-venerating gate as he attempted to heave the heavenly gate upward. Li Ziming glanced downward as heavenly light regathered between his brows. He snorted as his eyes gradually turned white gold. His hands formed seals and his heart grew steadily colder as he thought, "Very well. You do not try to flee with divine abilities, yet you dare try to overturn the heaven-venerating gate, then try." Thus he spared no effort. Mana circulated at full tilt. The radiance upon the divine ability grew even more pronounced, and the heavenly gate itself blazed with dazzling light, bleaching heaven and earth white. This made Paijia glance sideways in the heavens and Daisy shake his head on the ground. On the other hand, Kyuki was not surprised at all. Whether it was true fire or the heaven-venerating gate, Zukui Dao Gate clearly knew of them all, and he merely exhaled a mouthful of black qi. Daisy looked gloomy. Even though he had long expected those 3 fools to ruin things, he had not expected them to be crushed so quickly. His strength surpassed Chen Yin by a margin, and with the Kongsijang demon bowl containing the opponent's mansion water, he already held the upper hand. He shook his head inwardly at the scene and began to ponder. They said Chen Yin and Li Ziming were stretched thin, yet both have arrived. Could Jello have lacked confidence and instead tricked me into charging ahead? If that is the case, surely there is not another Ling Mei waiting in the great void. Schemes within the Buddhist land were no fewer than those of the immortal Tao. Daisy and Jello were both Mahas of the emptiness Tao and stood on the same side. Jello's strength far exceeded Daisy's, and Daisy himself had been promoted by Jello, so he had accepted being directed as a junior. Even so, his vigilance toward Jello was not light. He reflected, "You command many merciful ones, Zhelu, and there are plenty beneath the golden lotus throne as well. Yet you were unwilling to send even 2. Meanwhile 5 under my command went out, and 2 Dharma bodies were lost at once. Damn it." Both Tinglin and Q, who could not surpass Kyueki at the early Purple Mansion realm. Calling out a Maha is one thing, but how could they possibly hold back a whole group of merciful ones? After all, the formation core Dharma artifact suppressing and containing Tinglin and the other belonged to someone else. Daisy could not grasp the situation and could not obtain any word from Zhelu. A sense of wrongness welled up in his heart. He formed seals and stood still. Half of one eye instantly turned into a round orb dense with runes. Peering through the great void toward the Buddhist land, he urgently requested reinforcements. On his own battlefield, Pingling the Merciful One was even more frustrated. His 4 arms were being pressed down by the increasingly heavy radiant pass until they flickered in and out of light. The 2 behind him, shielded by his protection, barely managed to catch their breath, yet their expressions were just as grim. It was not that Pingling had insisted on resisting to the bitter end and refused to flee. The multicolored light from the heavens was a divine ability bestowed by the Buddhist land and limited to only a few forms. Whatever was granted was what it was. He was not a Maha with freely wielded wondrous divine abilities. The heaven-venerating gate had shaved away 60% of it, so what great use could it still have? But misfortune never came alone. Li Ziming would not wait. White light darted through, and heavenly radiance, hidden light descended once more. Fortunately, the 2 had gained a moment to breathe and hurriedly intercepted with their Dharma artifacts. The hammer-wielding Merciful One took a heavy blow and coughed up some golden powder. Unexpectedly, a streak of radiant light galloped through the sea of fire. Heavenly light flared sharply, and a white gold sleeve carrying golden flames swept out from within. This move had long been prepared by Li Ziming. The Supreme Yang Resonance radiant art could not perfectly coordinate with true fire, but he had descended in person with his Dharma body. Using Valley Wind leading fire, he gathered who knew how many layers of flame in his palm, and finally caught the hammer-wielding Merciful One off guard, slamming it fiercely into his chest. Since Li Ziming did not possess a body divine ability, the hammer-wielding Merciful One had a chance to react, but one arm holding the hammer had already been deflected by heavenly radiance, hidden. His other arm was about to be burned by fire. He was half a beat slow and had no choice but to take the palm strike head-on. Boom! Blazing true fire erupted. The Merciful One managed only a single howl as Purple Mansion Realm true fire, bright as a pillar of light, pierced through his chest in an instant, blasting out a spray of golden fragments. The 3-eyed Merciful One's eyes widened as he retracted all 4 palms at once. He forcibly struck into the fire while enduring the heavenly divine ability. Chapter 1347, Chilu II. Bang! Li Ziming took the blow and transformed into light as he withdrew. The 3 were suppressed by the divine ability and naturally could not give chase. They could only watch helplessly as he returned to the pass. The hammer-wielding Merciful One was charred black all over. A massive wound had been blasted into his chest, nearly tearing him in 2. Most of his momentum was gone, and golden lacquer fluid kept spraying from his mouth as he coughed. What a vicious fire art. In their eyes, Li Ziming's palm strike had come without warning. He must have secretly chanted and concealed the fluctuations of true fire with divine ability, accumulating energy bit by bit. It had indeed been vicious. Li Ziming retreated back to the pass and exhaled a breath of bright yang light. Between the protection of the mountain charging profound veil and the opponent's hurried strike, he only felt some internal turbulence and nodded inwardly. A monk's body is indeed tough. Fortunately, it is also cumbersome. This palm strike had little divine ability at its core. It relied almost entirely on true fire and talisman chi. It would never have landed against the likes of Chengxiao or Yehui once divine abilities were added. However, against the Merciful Ones, it was far easier to succeed. The 3 below had long since grown terrified. If this continued, the 2 would sooner or later be slowly worn to death by Li Ziming. Pingling had no choice but to transmit urgently. This man is sinister and worthy of the name of Weizli. Every art he cultivates from start to finish is clearly aimed at Buddhist cultivators. He is truly an enemy of our Tao. His strength cannot be underestimated. We cannot delay any longer. The 2 behind him nodded repeatedly, deeply agreeing. Only then did they think of the situation within the formation with lingering fear. Boundless waterfire is far too terrifying. It cuts off the great void. Those inside not only cannot sense the outside world, they are also constrained. It is better to come out and face the enemy, relying only on the Buddhist land to answer our plea. The 3 of them had actually felt relieved when they were sent out. Inside, that woman had stood upon a purple pavilion, holding a clay pot. The boundless water fire she spewed could rightly be called the bane of the Merciful Ones. Others merely cut off the great void. That fire erased the great void entirely. Touch it even a little, and the great void would be severed wherever one fled. If one were gravely injured, even death would not return them to the Buddhist land. A single boundless water fire was troublesome enough. More frightening still was the upper minister vessel passed down by the purple smoke gate. Empowered by boundless water fire, the flames it spewed had nearly flooded the grand formation. If not for Mahajelu personally guarding it, no one knew how chaotic it would have become inside. They were the weakest of the group, so they were driven out and spared from facing those terrifying flames. Yet with Li Ziming suppressing them like this, given enough time, even their Dharma bodies would likely be ground down until all their efforts were wasted. At this moment, the eight-armed Dharma wheel in midair finally lit up, and a monk with crimson skin and jade-green eyes flew out. He rode a short-haired tiger whose fur burned like flames, imposing and awe-inspiring. Traces of liberation were still lingering in his eyes, though his complexion was slightly ashen. When his gaze swept across the radiant pass between heaven and earth, he froze for an instant, then exclaimed in delight, "Remnants of ways lay." He strode through the air and grabbed the air with one hand, dragging out a crimson pagoda. His eyes flared with fury as the pagoda immediately shot forth light, and the red-faced merciful one shouted, "You still dare to be so arrogant." Li Ziming felt a surge of danger, and immediately knew this was no ordinary foe. He snapped his head around as heavenly light surged forth from between his brows. A loud explosion rang out in midair as smoke scattered. The red-faced merciful one was already upon him with his tiger, iron-like palms slamming down toward his face. The mountain-charging profound veil flashed into being in an instant, but shattered under that palm strike. The fierce tiger beneath the merciful one roared violently, and resounding Sanskrit chants filled Li X's ears, causing his mana to stagnate and forcing him to retreat. Unexpectedly, this man's Dharma body was formidable. He did not pause at all as crimson light flared in his eyes, and he opened his mouth twice, spewing red flames that poured down like rain. Although stable earth spirit containment could not ward off fire, Li Ziming's heaven-venerating gate strengthened his Dharma body and greatly enhanced resistance to flames. Standing atop the heaven-venerating gate and sheltered by heavenly light, he endured the blast of fire with only a sharp pain in his chest and no serious injury. Yet the flames clung to his chest, so he immediately brought two fingers together and released the profound fire of the three phases guard. Though the red-faced merciful one attacked fiercely and was clearly far stronger than the three below, he knew that dealing with an early purple mansion realm cultivator was still taxing. Thus he remained highly vigilant, retreating a step when scorched and blocking with his pagoda. This pagoda was forged from Zheng metal. Fire refines metal, but is restrained by true fire. Fortunately, among the three metals, Zheng metal feared fire the least. Chilu was also adept with flames, allowing him to suppress the fire for the moment. Once the profound fire of the three phases guard withdrew, the flames beneath the heavenly gate finally ceased and the structure began to tremble slightly. Li Ziming sighed inwardly and used his divine ability to wipe away the flames on his chest. As the red-faced merciful one's pagoda pressed down, the heaven-venerating gate finally rose from the ground. He fell into its center and used the power of his divine ability to protect himself. The three finally broke free after being scorched by true fire for so long. The treasure artifacts wielded by the sword-bearer and hammer-bearer had been slightly warped by the heat. The three rode the wind upward and said respectfully, "Many thanks to Lord Chilu." "No matter." The red-faced merciful one's attention was solely on Li Ziming, leaving no room to speak further with the others. His eyes glimmered faintly as he shielded the three from the descending heavenly light. The pagoda returned to block heavenly radiance, hidden light, while his heart surged with intent. It would be best to scheme and kill this man. Li Ziming stood unmoving, restraining the spirit artifact hidden in his sleeve. If this great battle had concerned Li Ziming's own interests, he would certainly have continued to pin the three down without letting go and endured Chilu's assault long enough to cripple the two weaker merciful ones beyond further combat. That would have been the best way to defeat all four. However, this battle was someone else's affair. If he fought so fiercely and allowed Chilu to close in, Li Ziming would surely be injured. Whether that pill could restore him was another matter. After so many years of hardship, he knew how much effort a single injury required to recover and truly did not wish to waste more time. Moreover, the opponents could not use formations to besiege him, and the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc had the ability to break free of any restrictions. There was no need to fight these four to the death. He simply stood quietly as he thought, "Each of these merciful ones grows greedy upon seeing me, and none of them will let me go easily." Sure enough, Chilu had already formed seals and begun casting, with the three guarding him. Li Ziming's gaze darkened as it fell once more upon the hammer-wielding merciful one, whose body was already badly ruined. "I'll send this fool off first." Chapter 1348, Bright Yang Killing Eye. Li Ziming let it pass with a single thought. yet the rainbow radiance in the sky broke free from the heaven-venerating gate's suppression and swelled once more to the form it had when it first appeared. Finally, the three-eyed merciful one received full empowerment from the rainbow radiance. Now, not only did 4 arms extend from his body, but golden illusory Dharma artifacts also manifested solidly in each hand: blades, spears, axes, and staves. Chillu was still in the midst of casting his spell when he saw the profound fire of the 3 phases guard spewed by Li Ziming surging toward him, accompanied by the heaven-venerating gate divine ability. He decisively brought back the pagoda that had originally been used to suppress the flames, leaving the 3 figures in front completely exposed. From this single move alone, Li Ziming understood that this old thing was far from ignorant. The heaven-venerating gate was a divine ability that suppressed Dharma artifacts. Buddhist cultivators were never skilled refiners to begin with, and the pagoda of an old thing like Chillu was certainly no match for a spirit artifact. If it were to be met head-on by the heaven-venerating gate, there would be no hope of ever retrieving it. Yet this retreat had exposed all 3 before. The ferocious Li Ziming, although the three-eyed merciful one had just been scorched by true fire, he still advanced, about to raise his empowered 4 arms to block when heavenly light flashed back and forth, and the heaven-venerating gate suddenly transformed into a doorway as tall as a man. The three-eyed merciful one was not without cunning. He stepped before the hammer-wielding merciful one, who was still gravely injured and had yet to recover, intending to meet change with constancy. But who would have thought that the heaven-venerating gate would instead charge straight toward Chillu's face? Chillu was halfway through forming his spell art hand seals. It was clear he too intended to call for divine ability empowerment. His expression immediately turned cold, unwilling to trade his pagoda for the chance to complete the spell, and even less willing to have the empowerment cut off and be suppressed beneath the gate. He abruptly broke off the spell, enduring the piercing heavenly light head-on before dispersing into fire and vanishing. The three-eyed merciful one Pingaling immediately realized he had been tricked and rushed to assist, yet neither of the 2 beside him was willing to step beneath the gate and make sacrifices for another, so all 4 arms swung their golden implements at Li Ziming's Dharma body. But the disunity among these Buddhist cultivators gave Li Ziming an opening. The mountain-charging profound veil lit up as he suddenly turned his head, heavenly light bursting forth from the center of his eyebrows. He forcefully endured the 4 golden artifacts, using heavenly radiance, hidden light to entangle Chillu, while the heaven-venerating gate rose high. It was clearly about to descend and suppress Chillu from above. This caused the red-faced merciful one's expression to darken. At this point, even if the 2 merciful ones hesitated, they had no choice but to act. If they continued to evade, Chillu would certainly lodge a complaint once he returned to the Buddhist land. Since Chillu was under the Golden Lotus throne, the 2 of them would surely suffer for it. After several exchanges, the 2 had no choice but to traverse the great void to intercept the heavenly radiance, hidden light. Li Ziming's mountain-charging profound veil shattered under Pingaling's 4 golden artifacts. Immediately, a brownish-yellow stable earth spirit containment lit up on his body. This wondrous art had narrow applications. It could not govern the 12 essences or fire virtue, yet withstood the merciful one's golden artifacts once again. Sparks erupted and the rainbow clouds in the sky trembled. A pale white surge of bright yang qi burst forth from where Li Ziming was, with bright yang purple flames surging outward, yet he had vanished. The 2 merciful ones who had just appeared while intercepting the heavenly radiance, hidden light, suddenly felt a chill run down their backs. They never expected that the heaven-venerating gate pursuing Chillu would halt precisely above them and plummet like a golden mountain to suppress them. Boom! The impact was terrifying, lighting up the sky as the protective treasure light around the 2 dissipated in an instant. Their knees creaked loudly, the mana within their bodies stagnated violently, and the great void instantly resounded. A flash of light appeared beneath the heaven-venerating gate as a jade-white palm pierced through the heavenly light and struck toward a face. That palm came down upon the forehead of the imposing golden face. Deprived of the protection of treasure light and rainbow radiance, this head, though harder than a Dharma artifact, held for only a brief instant before exploding outward in a radial burst. Golden flames surged like raging waves along with ferocious purple fire. The remaining body was blown apart completely, transforming into countless large and small golden stone orbs that rained down from the sky. At the same time, a beautiful and bountiful heavenly realm filled with countless golden bodies faintly appeared on the horizon, as if receiving some form of rainbow radiance, flickering briefly before vanishing. Stones flew everywhere across Mount Zioshi, dazzling to the eye. A merciful one had fallen and had returned to the Buddhist land. Boom! Immediately afterward, the heaven-venerating gate that spanned the sky trembled violently. Pingling, having been thoroughly toyed with, had burning red eyes as his four hands braced against the outside of the gate, causing the radiant pass to sway incessantly. Outside the gate and beneath the gate were naturally very different states. Moreover, Pingling had now received full empowerment and was shaking the divine ability. Li Ziming did not strike the sword-wielding Merciful One cowering in the corner. Instead, he lightly flicked his sleeve and withdrew, letting the entire majestic radiant pass dissolve into heavenly light, while he himself stood upon the rainbow clouds, breath. Ing lightly. The three-eyed Merciful One Pingling, fully empowered and striking with all his might, was truly not to be underestimated. However, although mountain-charging Sea-Pacing Tiger did not use the physical body to fight, mountain-charging Profound Veil and stable Earth Spirit Containment were still quite effective against these merciful ones. The divine ability mana within Li Ziming's body trembled violently, yet quickly settled, leaving only a slight cut on the shoulder of his Dharma body. The three-eyed Merciful One's face was so red it seemed ready to drip blood, when laughter rang out from midair. Good. Huiki was slightly at a disadvantage against Pai Jia, yet the opponent was evidently not daring to press him too hard, allowing him the leisure to observe the situation. Li Ziming secretly laughed to himself. This method really works. Cheng Xiao taught me well after all. That Li Ziming could unleash such terrifying damage in an instant and directly send off a Merciful One was mainly because the two opponents had just traversed the Great Void and had no time to react. Their protective treasure light and rainbow radiance were then shaken apart by Heaven Venerating Gate, allowing him to succeed. First, Heaven Venerating Gate was indeed effective. Second, he had learned this entire line of thinking from Cheng Xiao. Back then he had been ignorant and inexperienced, unable to handle divine ability combat, while Cheng Xiao possessed the marvelous ability to calculate Great Void landing points. As a result, every time he traversed the Great Void, he would suffer a spell and was nearly beaten to death within dozens of moves. Now the situation was reversed. Though he could not calculate the opponent's landing points, by striking at what the enemy must save, he could still predict their positions and suppress them unexpectedly. Unleashing the profound fire of the Three Phases Guard had allowed him to achieve a remarkable feat. Li Ziming had only just taken a single breath and had no time to celebrate when the rainbow light at the horizon finished descending. Qilu now had 6 arms, wielding 2 spears, 2 shields, and 2 swords which all gleamed gold. The 4 eyes on his face shone fiercely, and he rode a ferocious winged tiger through the air with eyes wide in fury. This Merciful One clearly had little affection for his companions. Despite his face being filled with rage, Li Ziming saw that his movements were quite cautious. He had a treasure artifact in hand, while flames were being brewed in his mouth. After all, Qilu was under the Golden Lotus Throne. At his level, he had already reached the peak among Merciful Ones, with differences lying only in certain spell arts and whether one possessed a treasure artifact. As Li Ziming sent the radiant pass sallying forth, he saw Qilu suddenly open his mouth. Boom! In an instant, thunder and flame interwove, gathering and erupting from his mouth to form a beam of spirit light. Li Ziming shuddered and solemnly raised his divine ability. In a flash of lightning and sparks, a burst of black smoke exploded upon Heaven Venerating Gate. Chapter 1349, Bright Yang Killing II. Li Ziming felt only slight pain. The divine ability beneath him shivered once and the black smoke dispersed. Fortunately, although this spirit light was extremely powerful, the thunder within it was far inferior to the flames. The source of the thunder was unknown, while the flames carried a hint of radiant fire, refined in an awkward manner. Li Ziming's bright yang was closely connected to radiant fire, so he suffered no great damage. Yet even as that spirit light fell, Qilu had closed the gap to the gate and met Li Ziming's profound fire of the Three Phases Guard. The pagoda suppressed the flames, and only then did 2 long spears manifest in his hands, thrusting through the fire toward Li Ziming's Dharma body. On the other side, the three-eyed Merciful One was not idle either. While he continued to shake the divine ability, he used the eye between his eyebrows to gather radiance once more. Dense white light had already accumulated there, while the remaining 2 eyes were fixed on the figure in the white golden Taoist robe, clearly waiting for the right moment. Li Ziming merely activated the Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art, transforming it into 2 beams of purple flame that bound the incoming golden spears. He then swept out heavenly light with a flick of his sleeve, illuminating the sword-wielding Merciful One that was rapidly sneaking closer. Unfortunately, Qilu's empowered Dharma body was no longer something any of the previous Merciful Ones could compare to. The Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art lacked sufficient mastery and held out for only a brief moment before being shattered by the 2 golden spears. At the same time, the winged tiger let out a roar and lunged to bite beneath his robes. Li Ziming had no choice but to step back, retreating into the heavenly gate and using his divine ability to block the 2 golden spears. A loud explosion rang out, his face turning pale as heaven-venerating gate began to sway once more, clearly strained under the combined assault from Chilu and Pingling outside the gate. His lack of proficiency in spell arts was finally exposed. He had far too few methods to deal with enemies. Even though the profound fire of the Three Phases Guard raged fiercely and burned the opponent's pagoda until it creaked, clearly unable to hold on, he still had to withdraw the Purple Mansion Realm's spiritual flames and force them toward Chilu to stall him, while channeling all of his mana into the disc-shaped spirit artifact hidden in his sleeve. At this moment, although the sword-wielding Merciful One was illuminated by heavenly light, he still advanced through the radiance. Li Ziming had no choice but to turn his head and release heavenly radiance, hidden light, inwardly sensing that things were about to go wrong. Sure enough, how could Pingling miss such a perfect opportunity? The long-accumulated white light in its third eye burst forth. Chilu, an old and seasoned Merciful One, naturally lit up with fierce intent as well and roared angrily, shaking the divine ability together with him. The white light seized the moment, piercing through the heavenly light and descending on Li Ziming. Mountain-charging Profound Veil and Stable Earth Spirit Containment lit up simultaneously. This gossamer-like veil exerted its effect several times, but finally shattered under that inch of radiant brilliance, only weakening it slightly before it landed upon Li Ziming's sleeve. Li Ziming was slightly startled that the brownish-yellow Stable Earth Spirit Containment was like nothing before the white light, offering no resistance at all. He only managed to shake out purple flames at the last moment, blasting forth a burst of brightness. This is the orthodox brilliant light of Buddhist cultivators. This brilliant light originates from the 12 essences. The brilliant light of Buddhist cultivators truly is one of the 12 essences, the brilliant essence. In an instant, Li Ziming recalled what Changxi had mentioned before his death, as well as Li Zhao's earlier reference to White Banyan's mention of the brilliant essence. His wrist had already been seared red, and heaven-venerating gate was affected, suddenly dimming. Enduring the sharp pain in his arm, he forced his mana to surge once again. Yet Chilu shook off the profound fire of the Three Phases Guard, and the two golden spears pierced through the heavenly light, stabbing viciously toward his chest. At this critical moment, Li Ziming deliberately ignored his injuries and instead let out a cold smile, shaking a glittering golden object from his sleeve. The surging Yang Star Command Treasure Disc. The 8 directional runes engraved upon the disc were already glowing at their brightest. There were layers upon layers of delicate pale white incantation patterns wrapped around the front edge, nearly turning pure white, while the center shone with dazzling golden brilliance as it hung before the chest of the white golden-robed Taoist. Li Ziming had secretly and steadily infused mana into it for a long time, refusing to waver even at the cost of injury. Now the golden brilliance at the center split apart, forming 4 stars from top to bottom in a slanted, northward-facing angular pattern. The foremost point of golden light was calm yet imposing, astonishingly freezing the 2 golden spears in place. The heavenly radiance took hold, unleashing the killing light of bright yang. After receiving divine ability empowerment, Chilu himself possessed some capacity for foresight and had received an early warning. He felt a chill rise up, a burning pain in his chest, and the 2 hands holding shields recoiled to block in front of him. The bright yang-killing light descended from the surging Yang Star Command Treasure Disc without a sound, like opening a skylight in a dim attic. A strand of golden-white radiance fell, illuminating the 2 golden shields Chilu had barely raised before him. The 2 golden shields turned to flying ash without any suspense, leaving not a single drop of molten gold to fall. The bright yang-killing light dimmed slightly before gently landing upon Chilu's arms. All the golden runes densely covering those golden body arms lit up at once, shining to the extreme, then instantly exploded into black smoke. In the next moment, both arms turned to flying ash. Chilu's pupils filled with golden fluid, pouring down like tears as he staggered back 2 steps and cried out, "Ouch." Li Ziming's face turned pale as the mana of his divine ability rapidly drained away. The divine ability beneath his feet had no choice but to retract, allowing the 3-eyed Merciful One to break free. The surging Yang Star Command Treasure Disc in his hand was scorching hot. Easing the moment, he sent the profound fire of the 3 Phases Guard surging after Chilu. At such close range, Chilu had taken a direct hit from the bright yang-killing light. Not only were both arms destroyed, but as the radiance dispersed, his eyes were scorched by heavenly light, tears streaming nonstop as dizziness washed over him. Yet his reaction was extremely quick. The pagoda could not return in time, but he fished out a round alms bowl from his waist and released its radiance. If stable earth spirit containment had not failed, and he had not been struck by the opponent's treasure radiance, Li Ziming's condition would have been far better. Even so, he slammed a mass of flames into the opponent's Dharma body and drew in a breath to summon his divine ability. The heaven-venerating gate suddenly manifested and smashed downward. Chilu's round alms bowl ignored everything else, including his own protection. It shot upward and slammed violently into the underside of the radiant pass. The alms bowl, which had been nurtured for an unknown number of years, immediately exploded, releasing intense, brilliant light. Yet Chilu's choice was undoubtedly the most correct one in these circumstances. After taking this art head-on without warning, he absolutely could not allow himself to be suppressed beneath the radiant pass. If the empowerment from the Buddhist land weakened, he might never rise again from beneath the radiant pass with his sudden injuries. It was better to let Li Ziming suppress the treasure artifact instead. Yet since a Buddhist cultivator's treasure artifact was inferior to begin with, there was a high chance it would never be recovered once suppressed. It was better to gamble and blow it up, preventing it from benefiting the enemy. Chilu truly lived up to being under the Golden Lotus throne. Even in such dire straits, he instantly made two correct judgments that instantly stemmed his losses and even caused Li Ziming's divine ability to waver. But as a result, the unhindered profound fire of the Three Phases Guard was already pouring down on this merciful one, radiating a terrifying aura that made the heart quake. Chapter 1350, Snowfall over the Purple Pavilion, I. Crash. Golden flames poured down the golden body. The protective treasure light around Chilu was immediately shattered by the bright yang-killing light. He gasped for a brief moment, and the faint glimmer that had just lit up was burned completely away by the searing true fire, drawing out a miserable scream. Li Ziming used heavenly radiance, hidden light to resist the crushing descent of the pagoda, yet the heaven-venerating gate was blasted by the opponent's treasure artifact until it flickered erratically. It dropped urgently to shield him, while the two merciful ones plummeted, trying to crash into the heaven-venerating gate before it had time to recover. At that moment, Li Ziming revealed the disc engraved with 8 directional runes, blazing with golden radiance, in his palm once again. The three-eyed merciful one reacted the fastest, almost instantly abandoning the treasure artifact in his hand and stepping back to shield himself with mana. The sword-wielding merciful one had no time to react at all. He could only grit his teeth and crash head-on into the divine ability, detonating a burst of heavenly light. Yet the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc in Li Ziming's hand did not shine as it lay in his hand. He no longer had any divine ability mana to drive this precious spirit artifact. Cough, cough. Their success was due to the merciful one's clumsiness, and their failure was also due to that same clumsiness. The sword-wielding merciful one had gambled correctly. The heaven-venerating gate dispersed into heavenly light. Li Ziming's vision darkened, his divine ability dimmed, and he appeared even weaker. Fortunately, at least one of them had held back. With a touch at his waist, a true profound heart-cleansing pill fell into his mouth. Even though Li Ziming had not suffered any major injuries yet, his divine ability mana had been drained by the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc. He had then forced the use of his divine ability and was injured by the enemy's desperate counterattack. His divine ability mana was in disarray, and the heavenly light around him was thin. Across from him, Chilu was not in any better condition. In the end, a merciful one was still a merciful one. After successive assaults from the bright Yang-killing light, the heaven-venerating gate divine ability, and the purple mansion realm's spiritual flames, more than half of the runes covering his body had been burned away. He was now half black and half gold, looking utterly disheveled. When he saw his two companions reduced to this state, yet still unable to break the opponent's divine ability, Chilu was so angry he almost laughed. If even one of the remaining two merciful ones had some experience, it wow. Did not have come to this. If these three had been replaced by a single five-eyed merciful one under the Golden Lotus throne, Li Ziming would already be severely injured. Chilu had never underestimated Li Ziming from beginning to end, yet he had not known about the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc. Thus, he had taken that blow almost completely unguarded. Heavenly light was still rampaging inside his body, while true fire roiled across his body. His eyes turned red as he shouted, "Idiots, use treasure light on him." Sure enough, Chilu had discerned the flaw of stable earth spirit containment with just those two glances earlier. White light immediately gathered between the three-eyed merciful one's brows. The sword-wielding merciful one stepped forward on his own initiative, determined not to give Li Ziming any breathing room. Li Ziming cursed inwardly. The mountain-charging profound veil lit up, but it was already showing signs of fatigue as he responded with the supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art. When the sword-wielding merciful one reached him, the advantage of the golden body became apparent. It still posed a threat as it temporarily restrained him. Although Li Ziming's divine ability mana was rapidly recovering, it was not the right moment to summon another divine ability to suppress Chilu again. Thus, when he saw the white light at Pingling's brow growing ever more intense, Li Ziming had no choice but to shift his gaze and assess the situation on the battlefield. He did not know what trump card Kyuki had used, but black chi was surging around him as gray mist covered his face. He had already equalized in his battle with Pai Jia, but he could not spare a hand at the moment. On the other hand, Chen Yin appeared even more battered under Daisy's methods. His mansion water divine ability seemed to be firmly caught by the Kongsijang demon bowl. If not for the presence of a chillingly sharp blade that inspired caution, he would likely have been injured by now. As for the remaining Taoist Master Luo, he was indeed just as Kyuki had said and could not be relied upon. Despite fighting against 3 merciful ones, none of whom had a golden lotus throne leader like Chilu, he only traded blows with them. It was unclear whether his divine ability was insufficient or if he was holding something back, but it did not look like anything decisive would come out of his side. There was no good news to be found anywhere. Instead, the 8-armed Dharma wheel in midair flickered uncertainly, and a golden body suddenly leaped out from it. This golden body was exceptionally imposing, a full circle larger than Chilu's. Its radiance blazed brilliantly. He had a ferociously contorted expression as he held 2 charred, broken rods. What? Li Ziming was startled. The 3 before him had already forced him into a disadvantage. If another joined, his life would likely be in danger. He swept out with his spiritual sense and frowned slightly as he felt both relief and worry. It turned out this figure, who looked like a ferocious, merciful one, was covered head to toe in flames and was screaming miserably. The fire spiraled layer upon layer around his golden body in dual deep azure and luminous blue hues. Chilu nearly flinched at the sight of these flames, his expression ugly. If others could see it clearly, how could Li Ziming not? He had personally wielded this fire before. It was Tinglin's boundless water fire. Li Ziming felt both relief and concern. He was relieved that after all this turmoil, Tinglin's situation inside did not seem too bad. However, once this burly merciful one appeared, he himself would be in serious trouble. This fellow's complexion was somewhat ashen. After surveying the surroundings, he suddenly spotted the man in white golden robes. He froze for a moment, then rose on the wind, transforming into a sweep of golden sand that rushed over. He actually knows a footwork technique, very different from Chilu. A chill ran over the back of Li Ziming's head. Without time to adjust his mana, he raised his divine ability. Heavenly radiance, hidden light, and purple mansion realm true fire burst forth together, calling the divine ability back into being and suppressing the turmoil within him. Bright yang rose high, and he finally steadied himself once more. However, before the heaven-venerating gate could even slightly stabilize, treasure light was already streaking over. Although Pingling was not strong, being a merciful one meant he still had keen judgment. He had been waiting for the instant Li Ziming raised his divine ability to strike with the treasure light. Yet the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc in Li Ziming's hand was already bright. A thick ring of white sigils along its edge rotated, divided into 4 rings of runes. The outermost ring shifted from bright to dim. The disc was held inverted, and 4 points of golden radiance separated once more, though not as BR. Brilliant as before, it formed an inverted image with heavenly radiance below and the Yang apex above. The radiant light in the sky instantly converged. The heaven-venerating gate transformed into drifting multicolored clouds, flashing across the heavens. 4 bright stars trailing golden light rose into the air. The heavenly light gathered and withdrew, leaving the surroundings dim, as if night had fallen. The treasure light shooting out from between the 3-eyed merciful, one Pingling's brows was blocked by the 4 golden stars. The stars trembled and then exploded apart. Clang! Heavenly light poured down like water. Though far less overpowering than the bright Yang killing light, it carried a clear, all-encompassing, binding quality. It not only forced the burly merciful one who had turned into golden sand out of the air, but also caused all 4 to pause at once. Chapter 1351, Snowfall over the Purple Pavilion, II. Li Ziming flickered to a spot not far away. However, before he could even deploy the heaven-venerating gate, he sensed something. His gaze sharpened as he quietly watched the world before him. A small 8-pointed snowflake spun in the air and drifted gently down. He lifted his gaze slightly and saw the entire mountain range already filled with falling snow. It was gradually turning pure white. Li Ziming was first greatly alarmed, his mind briefly blank, then quickly realized what was happening. No pine resin. Thankfully, there is no pine resin. All the divine ability cultivators on Mount Zaiyoshi lifted their heads with strange expressions. The 8-armed Dharma wheel suspended in the air finally could not bear the strain as it emitted creaking sounds. In an instant, Mount Zaiyoshi grew far colder as icy winds howled. The 8-armed Dharma wheel dimmed down to almost nothing. White snow burst forth from it, the eruption accelerating at a terrifying pace. In an instant, it became a sky-reaching pillar of white snow amid the drifting flakes, accompanied by a mournful cry. Crack! The dispersing brilliant light was pressed down and scattered in all directions. A sky-piercing killing intent formed from cold essence, condensed to the extreme surged out of the snow. Countless multicolored clouds filled the sky as a golden body rose up, revealing a noble Dharma body covered with innumerable eyes. Zhalu, as the foremost figure beneath the emptiness Tao Dharma master, one who had achieved the turbid void Maha level of power, this Buddhist cultivator manifested himself seated amid raining mandala flowers of the emptiness Buddha land. His presence was majestic and clearly uninjured, radiating endless lotus blossoms falling like rain. Immediately, one merciful one golden body after another appeared around him. Beneath Zhalu's golden body, the white snow set off a small purple pavilion. An immortal maiden draped in falling snow stood there, her brows tightly knit and blood seeping from the corner of her lips as the sword in her hand pointed toward the sky. The sword was pure white, its blade was long, its hilt short, square, and extremely simple, only half a finger thicker than the blade. Its body bore patterns of profound snow and the supreme yin rising to the heavens. Its surface depicted the harmony of heaven and earth as autumn passed and winter arrived. Radiance alternated across it as it radiated a sky-piercing killing intent. A purple mansion realm's spirit sword. How could Li Ziming not guess the origin of the sword? It is the famous frosty absolute sword of the Azure Pond sect. It must carry extraordinary methods. It seems they used this sword to break the formation by surprise. The Li family was not even at Moongaze Lake when the frosty absolute sword first displayed its might. No one knew which ancestor was still hidden in some corner. At that time, the sword was not yet called Frosty Absolute Sword, but it was already known as the Azure Pond Sect Master's treasured trump card, one of the few spirit swords under heaven. It was said that after the chaos at Moongaze Lake, it had gained tremendous benefits and countless marvels, and thus came to be named Frosty Absolute Sword. The Frosty Absolute Sword had not appeared for many years even by the time the Li family rose to prominence, yet its name still spread across the lands of Wu and Yue, known even among rogue cultivators. This was Li Ziming's first time seeing this spirit sword. The moment he sensed the sky-piercing killing intent and spiritual snow, he knew this spirit artifact was extraordinary. It was likely the greatest spirit artifact he had ever encountered. However, he was not a lover of swords and did not lose himself in it. Seeing more and more merciful ones gathering around him, some in good condition and others not, he immediately turned his attention back. Amid the chaos, he indeed saw Chilu's eyes gleam with excitement, his gaze burning with impatience. As the merciful one's eyes swept AC. Across the field, he suddenly spotted a golden body descending through the snow. It had 3 eyes on its face and 2 more on its chest, with many arms arranged around its body in the form of a lotus. The augmented radiance was extremely powerful, and judging by its aura, it seemed even stronger than Chilu. His eyes shone as he let out a fierce shout, "Five-eyed one, quickly join me in surrounding and killing the remnant of Wei's Lei." The situation was extremely clear. Once the Huixu demon subduing grand formation was broken, with several Purple Mansion realm cultivators present and Tinglin and Kyuhu holding boundless water fire, the Buddhist Maha cultivators would not dare press too hard. They would not risk lives by forcing out the deepest foundations of the Supreme Yang. Once the formation was broken, escaping would not be difficult even if the two were in poor condition. Currently, for these merciful ones, the most valuable and easiest target to crush was none other than Li Ziming. The 5-eyed merciful one with lotus-like wondrous hands had just landed. Hearing Chilu's shout, he raised his head in shock, his gaze landing on Li Ziming in the distance. It felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His legs went weak as he cried out in alarm in his mind, "Oh no, that immortal family from Moongaze Lake." Ever since he had been seized by the immortal lord last time, the 5-eyed merciful one had lived like a rat. He had used to indulge freely back in his own territory for hundreds of years. Now he could not even step outside, as he buried himself in the temple and did not even dare to collect rent from the temple tenants. He was perfectly aware of how many sins his disciples and followers committed on a daily basis. Whenever he found excuses to slaughter them, those below all felt he had become temperamental and unpredictable. The 5-eyed one lived in constant unrest, tossing and turning, unable to sit or stand in peace. He thought to himself, "Who, Li Ziming, and you want me to kill Li Ziming, you bastard? Is courting death not enough for you that you have to drag me along too?" He was furious and frantic, his emotions a complete jumble. His face betrayed his rage, as it contorted into a ferocious expression with eyes wide in outrage. This was genuine anger, but Chilu took it for a display of divine ability and felt perfectly aligned with him, rejoicing inwardly, good. Li Ziming had noticed him long ago. His first instinct had been to flee into the great void by taking advantage of the moment when the merciful ones had just landed and not yet reacted. He would also have the surging Yang Star Command treasure disk protecting him as he broke free. After all, these merciful ones were no less threatening than Chilu. Once they attacked together, Li Ziming would not only be injured but might even be targeted by Daisy and others. However, most of these merciful ones were afflicted by the boundless water fire. As long as the flames on their bodies were not suppressed, they would naturally be cut off from the Great Void and could not enter it to deal with him. But he had only just entered the Great Void and had not yet had time to recover when his vision suddenly brightened. A middle-aged man wearing a Taoist robe, with hair and beard half white, was standing in the Great Void. He held a sword in his arms, his gaze sharp as a blade, yet a black talisman hung at his waist, shrouding him in a dark haze that made him difficult to perceive. Senior Ling Mei. Li Ziming was instantly overjoyed, yet he saw that this Sword Gate Taoist master no longer had the courtesy and kindness he once showed. Killing intent filled his eyes as he shook his head, one hand already gripping the sword hilt as he waited quietly. In the very next instant, a splendid multicolored light chased after them into the Great Void, crossing the surging emptiness as it rapidly expanded, revealing a massive golden body. Its horse-like face with pitch-black eyes looked especially terrifying within the Great Void. It was Daisy. Judging by this speed, this had clearly been planned in advance. The radiant multicolored light, mixed with gold and seeming to have eyes of its own, descended directly on Li Ziming. Only then did it reveal a demon-subduing lotus covered in intricate patterns. The three retributions, world-entering lotus. From beginning to end, Daisy had been nurturing his own schemes. He had clearly been scheming against Li Ziming all along, harboring the intent to eliminate him early. Now that the situation had drastically changed, this Maha did not wait for the merciful ones to swarm in. He had already charged his treasure artifact and had been waiting for Li Ziming in the Great Void. Clang! At the same time, Ling Mei, standing behind Li Ziming, finally let out a cold laugh and raised his wrist. Golden chi surged as cold blades interwove, as if responding to the white snow and purple pavilion in the manifested world. A vast expanse of grim white sword light leapt forth in the Great Void. Sword Gate was already the foremost in offense within the supreme Yang Dao lineage, and Ling Mei was the leading sword cultivator of the Sword Gate. Though burdened by worldly matters in his youth and unable to form true sword intent, he was still top tier whether in sword arts or divine abilities. He had also prepared this strike for an unknown length of time. Li Ziming felt his vision turn completely white as a crisp, pleasant, and clear sword hum rang in his ears. Chapter 1352, Returning to the Mountain Eye. Five-Eyed One, what are you doing? Qilu never expected that the merciful one before him, with wondrous hands like lotus petals behind his back, would be so furious yet remain completely motionless. He stood eerily still in midair. Clearly, the boundless water fire on his body had long since extinguished, and he still retained 8 or 9/10 of his momentum. His condition could be called excellent among this group of merciful ones, yet the old thing did not move at all. Yo! Before Qilu could finish cursing, he felt the Great Void tremble. A thunderous explosion rang by his ears, followed by a deafening roar. The Buddhists gathered on Mount Zioshi all raised their heads. Black rifts of various sizes appeared in the sky, linking directly to the Great Void. Dazzling golden chi mixed with treasure light shot forth, and upon entering the manifested world, transformed into drifting pink lotus flowers and cascading golden sand. A streak of bright golden light fled through the air. Amid the scattered petals and golden sand, the intricately patterned three retributions world-entering lotus let out a mournful cry as it circled in the sky, standing out brilliantly against the white snow. Qilu stared in shock and cried out in alarm, Daisy is injured. This streak of light seemed to trigger the collapse of the entire battlefield. The purple immortal pavilion floating in the air grew ever brighter, and a middle-aged man with a half-white hair and beard stood upon it, positioned in front of Ningguan. The completely snow-white purple mansion realm spirit sword, etched with profound snow and supreme yin, its surface depicting the passing of autumn into winter, had already fallen into the middle-aged man's hands. Ling Mei. Ling Mei of the Sword Gate. Ling Mei was wielding the frosty absolute sword. The difference between the frosty absolute sword in Ningguan's hands compared to when it was in Ling Mei's could be described as the difference between heaven and earth. The Buddhist land in the sky almost instantly dispersed. Multicolored light, thrones, golden bodies all vanished faster than they appeared, leaving only drifting white snow. Only now did Qilu belatedly understand the five-eyed merciful one's actions. Ling Mei must have used Li Ziming as bait, striking with a single sword to injure Daisy, who held the three retributions world-entering lotus. If it had been Qilu himself, he might not even have had a chance to return to the Buddhist land. He had never gotten along with the five-eyed one for hundreds of years, yet now, because of the other's caution, his own life had been spared. His feelings were complicated as he immediately fled into the Great Void so crafty. Rumor has it this old thing has been temperamental lately, slaughtering his own disciples. How is there even a trace of senility in him? He is only getting more and more cunning. He must be plotting for the next position within the emptiness Tao. Unexpectedly, the five-eyed merciful one himself was so frightened that his whole body had gone weak. He did not even dare to look back, muttering to himself as he rushed straight into the great void. The other merciful ones also fled or scattered, each scrambling to save their own lives. Who would still be willing to stay? Zhelu had already dispersed the Buddhist land, and this Maha was remaining only to prevent too many merciful ones of the emptiness Tao from falling. Otherwise, a supreme Yang Dao lineage Taoist master of the metal virtue, wielding a purple mansion realm spirit sword famous for centuries, would probably need several golden lotus throne-level figures to die before it was enough. At the same time, the black-clad Taoist master Luo, shrouded in sinister Yin Qi, also fled in terror. The moment he saw Ling Mei, half his life was scared out of him. He fully activated his divine ability, abandoning any thought of claiming credit, and turned tail to flee. The snowfall in the sky grew heavier. Mahajelu was clearly growing wary, the 1,000 eyes on his body blinking in unison as pink and golden light converged. Taoist master Qiuqi's expression relaxed as he landed beside the purple radiant pavilion, cradling his sword in his arms. Zhelu was clearly different from Daisy. His golden body was profound and wondrous as it reached up to the heaven. As his voice thundered down from layers of clouds, so it is fellow Taoist Ling Mei. Upon seeing such divine ability of the sword Tao, I thought it was Luing. Ling Mei said nothing as golden qi merely gathered upon the sword. The frosty absolute sword, which had not rested in the hands of a high-level sword cultivator for many years, flickered between bright and dim, as if exceedingly excited. Upon hearing the name Luing, a trace of coldness flashed through Taoist master Qiuqi's eyes. He had never been one with a good temper, so how could he possibly hold it in? He cursed, "You bald old donkey, who are you pretending for? If my grand Taoist master was here, would you dare show even half of that shiny head of yours? If you're going to get lost, do it early. When my family's grand Taoist master roamed the world with his sword, did you dare let out a single fart? The moment the grand Taoist master goes into seclusion for a few years, you come out barking like a mad dog." Qiuqi sneered coldly, speaking without the slightest fear. "If you force our southern side too far, I want to see whether it is your golden body that shatters first." Qiuqi's torrent of curses was deeply satisfying and made Ling Mei's brows relax. Ningguan had been trapped within the formation for several days. Even with her reserved nature, she felt like some of her pent-up frustration had been released as she quietly took a pill. Li Ziming emerged from the great void and supported Chen Yin in midair. The Chen family ancestor's face was deathly pale, clearly having suffered a serious injury. Li Ziming did not hesitate. He took out a true profound heart-cleansing pill from his sleeve and pressed it into Chen Yin's hand, speaking quietly, "Senior, do not worry. This pill was refined by the pristine water Tao. It specializes in healing injuries and regulating qi. It perfectly suits your divine ability. Take it at once." Both were Purple Mansion realm Taoist masters, but unlike Li Ziming, Chen Yin was suffering a severe shortage of pills. The others were from the supreme Yang Dao lineage and naturally did not lack good items. In truth, Chen Yin was the most desperate at the moment. He quickly expressed his thanks and accepted it. Despite being scolded so thoroughly, Zhelu was neither angry nor anxious. His voice remained calm, clear, and heavy as he said, "Although I am not a match, I would surely benefit immensely and be overjoyed if I were fortunate enough to receive guidance from fellow Taoist Luing." Ling Mei ultimately had not crossed the Purple Mansion realm threshold. Though Zhelu was wary of him wielding a spirit sword, he was certainly no match for the grand Taoist master Luing. He responded coldly yet softly, "There is no need for senior. I will come and exchange pointers myself." Zhelu had already retreated into the great void as the words fell. Atop the purple qi immortal pavilion, Qiuqi vanished at the same time. The radiance over Mount Zioshi dissipated as dark clouds covered the sky once again. Heaven and earth turned dim, leaving only thick layers of snow on the ground. The shifting radiance of the frosty absolute sword pierced into the great void, transforming into countless forms. Gentle moonlight accompanied by icy brilliance flooded the pitch-black great void in an instant. The great void should have contained nothing, yet even the darkness retreated like a tide. Zhelu's golden body was equally terrifying in size. Hundreds and thousands of arms extended from his back, each arm bearing an open eye at its center, appearing both noble and eerie. These tens of thousands of eyes opened simultaneously, revealing deep blue-black pupils. Pink radiance flew forth like a peacock spreading its tail, dazzling in brilliance with even the slightest movement. Ling Mei struck with a single sword. The sword carried flowing snow and reflected autumn light. It surged upstream through countless river-like streams of pink radiance and stabbed straight toward Jelu's face. In an instant, the great void roared and exploded with boundless, brilliant light. Such a great battle had erupted within the great void, so the manifested world likewise echoed with its effects. Layer upon layer of golden snow swept through the air, vanishing before they could touch the ground. The several purple mansion realm cultivators all showed strange expressions. What an awe-inspiring sword light! Being so close to the northern Buddhist cultivators was already extremely dangerous. Since Ling Mei and Jelu were locked in battle within the Great Void, it was only natural for the others to withdraw quickly. Li Ziming looked around and flew over. Ningguan coughed twice and spat out some blood on the purple Qi Immortal Pavilion, causing fine snow to drift once more over Mount Zioshi. Yet her complexion gradually grew rosier, clearly showing improvement. Seeing Li Ziming approach, Ningguan lifted her slender brows and SB. "Oak gently, greetings, Zheajing. Many thanks for this matter." It was also Li Ziming's first time meeting her. He cupped his hands politely and replied, "It was only right." At this moment, the purple Qi Immortal Pavilion beneath them finally transformed. Flowing light scattered as it gradually shrank into a palm-sized miniature pavilion. Taoist Master Tinglin finally manifested in the world and held the small pavilion in her hand. This woman's divine ability mana was dim and lusterless. Her face was pale, and she looked utterly exhausted. Most critically, her foundation seemed to have been shaken. Purple Qi rolled and scattered, her divine ability flickering between bright and dim. Compared to her, Ningguan could almost be said to have suffered no serious injuries at all. Tinglin forced herself to stay alert at the sight of Li Ziming, looking somewhat surprised as she let out a breath and said, "Sorry to trouble you all, Taoist friends. Fellow Taoist Zheajing is far away in the Eastern Sea, yet you were still made to make this trip." Li Ziming was more familiar with her than with Ningguan. Seeing her like this, he returned the salute and replied, "When a Taoist friend is trapped, it is only natural to return and give aid." Chen Yin was clearly not close to the two of them. He merely nodded and said little. The four of them together entered the Great Void and crossed the river all the way to the purple smoke-blessed land. Tinglin took another pill and lowered her gaze as she said, "I will not say excessive thanks. I am severely injured and truly cannot delay. I will remember this assistance. Let me first stabilize my divine ability. For now, leave the matters to fellow Taoist Ning." She took out a circular formation plate with a gray-gold base and purple patterns from her sleeve, along with a jade slip, and handed them together to Ningguan. Only then did she force a smile at Li Ziming and say, "Do not worry about your esteemed family's grand formation. Taoist Master Ning's talent in formations is astonishing. She's not like me, a half-trained learner forcing my way through. Her attainment will soon surpass mine with even more ingenious ideas. Entrust it to her." Ningguan nodded silently. After struggling between life and death, she had grown much closer to Tinglin and said softly, "Sister may leave everything for me. Please focus on recovering properly." Tinglin merely held onto the purple jade pavilion, seemingly using it to temporarily suppress her injuries. She transformed into purple essence and slipped away, descending into the blessed land. Li Ziming felt slightly relieved, judging that the matter had finally come to an end, and relaxed. Huiqi's affair would undoubtedly have been extremely troublesome without the surging Yang Star Command treasure disk, and injuries would have been inevitable. Fortunately, the great Ziyuqi temple had been generous. The only real danger throughout had been Daisy, but that Maha was driven back by Ling Mei's sword, allowing him to escape unscathed. Yet thinking back on it, he still found it hard to believe. Others might not understand, but Li Ziming had witnessed it personally. He thought to himself, just one sword. Daisy had also gone all out, using the famous Three Retributions world-entering Lotus. Yet Ling Mei's single sword strike had first damaged the Three Retributions world-entering Lotus, leaving scars on the treasure artifact and stripping away its radiant light before shattering Daisy's protective treasure light. The sword had sealed his throat, terrifying Daisy into fleeing in disgrace. Although Ling Mei had prepared in advance and seized the perfect moment, Daisy's treasure artifact had also been borrowed. That horse head would likely not have survived without the Three Retributions world-entering Lotus. Chapter 1353, Returning to the Mountain, II. Li Ziming sighed emotionally. Taoist Master Ling Mei truly possesses the might of a sword immortal. He absolutely did not believe that someone capable of wielding such a sword lacked sword intent. Chen Yin, also a sword cultivator, added with a sigh, "Senior Ling Mei's attainment in the sword Dao has already reached the pinnacle. Even without sword intent, it is enough to make others submit. Even dueling sword immortal from the lacquer marsh of the Wu state often comes to visit him, believing himself inferior, and has never gained the upper hand when crossing swords with him. To possess the might of a sword immortal without sword intent, if he were to obtain sword intent, the sword light of today would surely be even more terrifying. Li Ziming nodded in amazement, yet doubts arose in his heart. Riding the wind toward the lake, he asked, "Yet I have some doubts. After sword essence comes sword intent. How can one achieve sword might even higher than sword intent without passing through sword intent? It seems the sword gate's sword manuals are truly eared." Striking. Chen Yin nodded slightly, appearing to share the same suspicion. Ningguan's expression was complex, as though she had not yet recovered from the northern encirclement. Only after hearing Li Ziming's words did she reply with faint interest. Sword intent must come before divine ability. Once divine ability is achieved, no matter how high one's sword cultivation may be, one will no longer have any connection to sword intent, unless it is the nurturing azure heaven recorded in ancient texts. Nurturing azure heaven, the young sword immortal Wang of those years. Only then did Li Ziming nod. Lost in thought, they continued toward the lake. The three emerged from the great void and landed on Zhaijing Mountain, covered with gardenia trees. White jade pillars stood or lay scattered, still in their original places. The ground was cleanly swept, and the round tables and stools were just as before. Fresh, clear water had even been replaced in the jade kettle, ready for Li Ziming's return at any time. Li Ziming had not returned for many years. When he saw this familiar scene again, he felt deeply moved and waved his sleeve as he said, "My humble place is simple. Please forgive any shortcomings." The two did not stand on ceremony and sat down one after the other. Li Ziming began to brew tea. Ningguan looked somewhat uneasy and said with lowered eyes, "This time, it was thanks to Senior Tinglin's full protection that I did not suffer serious injuries. As for the matters by the river, I will still have to trouble Zheijing to assist once they are placed in my hands." "That is only natural." Li Ziming still felt uneasy at heart. This time he had chosen to protect himself wisely, and the situation had not turned bad. He was not injured, yet after seeing Tinglin's condition just now, no matter how effective the purple smoke gate spirit herbs might be, she clearly had no ability to act for the time being. Thus he asked, how did things reach such a state? Ningguan shook her head and said, there were disturbances at Mount Zioshi. Tinglin suspected someone was making a move, but she did not expect that fate itself had tilted toward the northern Buddhists. It was exploited by the emptiness Tao to scheme against the two of us. We never imagined that Buddhist cultivators could calculate our whereabouts, and thus we were careless. Fortunately, we had the Purple Throne Serene Spirit Pavilion. Such a spirit treasure is profoundly wondrous and capable of resisting external enemies. Zhelu was also wary of the trump cards in our hands. The Frosty Absolute Sword was in my possession, and I had originally planned to break the formation and leave. However, Tinglin was on guard against other Maha waiting outside, fearing that we would be suppressed again after breaking the formation, so we chose to hold our position quietly. Later, the formation trembled several times, and we noticed that the traces of many merciful ones had disappeared. We realized that reinforcements had arrived to rescue us, and only then did we grit our teeth and break the formation. Chen Yin clearly understood the situation and added, Senior Ling Mei was also waiting for the right moment. If he had acted rashly, it would not have been easy to protect us all in retreat, nor would it have been easy to explain matters to his sect. Once Taoist Master Ning appeared together with the Frosty Absolute Sword, he then had sufficient justification to act. Li Ziming pondered those words, as Ningguan said, I have heard that the sword gate is overly rigid. Those elders truly wish to withdraw from the world, yet the Chenghua Hall allows collective petitions to request the enforcement of sword laws. If Senior had not stabilized the Cheng family in advance, we would not have had even this bit of freedom today. Chen Yin was not of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, so he naturally remained silent. Li Ziming also said nothing and simply poured tea for her. After quite a while, Chen Yin set down his cup and finally spoke. As for this incident, fellow Taoist Luo from the southern border also contributed his efforts. However, he merely engaged the merciful ones in battle and may have been injured. He is also not very trusting of us, so he departed ahead of time. Since Chen Yin had invited him, he must have been entrusted with this message and could not simply say nothing. He clearly did not wish for further contact, yet he had followed them all the way to the lake, evidently for the sake of saying this. As expected, Ningguan frowned and asked doubtfully, Taoist Master Luo, I have not heard of him. Although Chen Yin had to mention him, the other party was not a good person. Moreover, both his companions were from the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, so he did not conceal anything and answered, fellow Taoist Ning need not worry. He is not an old acquaintance of the Azure Pond sect either. His Dao lineage has deficiencies that need to be remedied, and he covets a certain inheritance within the Azure Pond sect's secret vaults. That is why he offered assistance. Ningguan fell into thought. Chen Yin lifted his sleeve and said politely, having left the Chen family and manifested in the world by the river, there will inevitably be petty figures plotting against me. I must return at once to respond to the changing situation, so I will not trouble you further. Seeing him about to leave, Li Ziming hesitated slightly and asked, What about Senior Ling Mei on that side? There is no need to worry. Even though that Taoist Master Cheng has been cultivating in seclusion for a long time, he will certainly follow something of this scale. His sword path and cultivation are inferior to Senior Ling Mei's, but he is still a high cultivator of metal virtue and will not come to harm. Ningguan also lifted her head and added, among all sects, Buddhist cultivators fear the sword gate the most. No matter how strong other Dao lineages are, it is not easy for them to leave behind contingencies. Some predecessors leave nothing at all, but sword intent can be preserved within the sword itself and be passed down from generation to generation. This trump card can be called the greatest among all factions. Our methods might at most destroy one of his golden bodies, but if the sword gate is pushed too far, killing a Maha would not be difficult. It might not even shake the sword gate's foundations much. Chen Yin nodded, sighed, and gave a hurried salute as he rode the wind away. After he left, Ningguan relaxed considerably. Leaning against the jade table, she revealed a trace of weariness and said softly, "The Li family has not had it easy all these years. If junior brother Qijing were here, he would also be a first-rate figure by now. The Kai family deserved their fate. I warned them long ago, yet Heiyuan still fell into it." She was reminiscing about the past. Perhaps Ningguan believed that the Kai family truly deserved their fate, but Li Ziming did not share much of that sentiment. If Kai Buzi were still in the sect, the Kai family would still be living freely, and Li Ziming would still have to bow his head to Kai Buzi. Thus he replied, their family's fortune declined, and their strength weakened, making them a natural target for retribution under governance. The Ning family was also set free. Ningguan smiled faintly as she slipped a small box from her sleeve, placed it on the jade table, and said softly, "It was still hard on fellow Taoists to make this trip. I am not very familiar with Senior Chen Yin and will have to visit him later to offer thanks. As for the ties between our two families, there is no need for formality. I have delayed your cultivation and made you travel thousands of kilometers from the Eastern Sea, so I must make it up to you." This is a cultivation provision called the Surging Separation Treasure Leaf. It was obtained from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven and comes from a spirit flower grown beside the Saiyuan Hua. It is a purple mansion realm provision of the Radiant Fire Tao. She opened the box. Inside lay a neatly placed curled crimson long leaf. Its purple-black veins glimmered faintly in the light. Ningguan had only just reached the purple mansion realm. Where would she obtain so many treasures? Naturally, they had been left behind by the Ning family's Taoist master Yuansu. A radiant fire provision. Li Ziming had once obtained a hornwood provision as a return gift from the Sword Gate. Purple Mansion Realm provisions were inferior to spirit items. Though they were of Purple Mansion Realm, most were minor offshoots of Purple Mansion Realm spirit items and were not easily obtained. Ningguan taking this out specially truly startled Li Ziming. Rescuing Ningguan could indeed be considered a small favor, but this matter had been initiated by Kueki, who had even provided payment for Li Ziming's help. Ningguan's gesture clearly showed an intent to build ties as she said softly, "Radiant fire conflicts with my own Tao, so this item is of no use to me. Since Zheajing is skilled in alchemy, it will naturally be far more useful in your hands." Li Ziming found it somewhat hard to accept and could only say, "Thank you for your kindness, but such a heavy gift is inappropriate. Let us treat it as a trust placed with me. If I truly refine a pill one day, I will send one to you." After all, radiant fire items were quite valuable to the Li family. Not only was Bright Yang related to radiant fire, but Li Jiangqian also cultivated radiant fire. Li Ziming naturally could not return it. Ningguan clearly treated his words as polite convention, nodded slightly and replied, "Matters between North and South are already troublesome, and now the Buddhist cultivators are interfering again. The Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation cannot be delayed. If it cannot be established, things will only grow more difficult later." I read the jade slip on the way. Senior Tinglin's design is ingenious. The most troublesome part is actually these 32 profound pins. Give me 3 days, and we will set these 32 profound pins across the region and connect the earth veins. Then we can proceed. Li Ziming could only wish that she would act sooner. His divine ability was still somewhat unsettled and needed minor adjustment, but he had already taken a pill earlier, and these issues would recover with time. He set them aside and said seriously, "No matter. I have the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger. I can also handle connecting the earth veins. You should first recuperate your mana. I will drive in these mountain-piercing profound pins myself." Ningguan showed a genuinely heartfelt smile for the first time and said, "There is no need to rush, Zheajing. Sister Tinglin fixed the positions several years ago. If there have been any earth vein changes in recent years, the key points will no longer be accurate. We also need to spend a few days waiting for the 2 Taoist masters. It is best that all of us meet." Ningguan was clearly quick-witted as well. She laughed softly and then reminded him, moreover, Senior Kyueki has a considerable attainment in formation arts. The Ziyukui and Hengzhu inheritances are complete, and both alchemy and formations are strong. Those are all Origin Mansion legacies. Asking just one more question would greatly benefit your family's formation. Do not worry, I will not ask him to examine the formation plate. I will only ask about the earth vein nodes as he sees them. Once Tinglin's profound pins are driven in and the earth veins shift and merge within the formation, there will be no need to worry about secrets leaking. Li Ziming nodded inwardly. This woman had thought things through carefully and was clearly speaking to him as a Purple Mansion realm cultivator with some understanding of formations. In truth, he did not fully understand it, but still nodded solemnly. Thus he sat cross-legged briefly atop the jade pillar as light and darkness intertwined between heaven and earth. He still carried Ziyukui Daogate's spirit artifact in his sleeve. The surging Yang Star Command treasure disc emitted a faint, bright Yang radiance, making his heaven-venerating gate even more active. Chapters 1354, Zheguang Profound Purple Eye. Time intertwined over the lake as Li Ziming continued to refine his divine ability. When he opened his eyes, he found Li Jianqian before him, who said respectfully, Taoist Master, the various lords have arrived and are already on the island. They request only that you go over. Li Ziming immediately understood that Kyueki and the others had returned. Beside him, Ningguan also opened her eyes, her expression gentle, and said to Li Ziming, Your esteemed family is well disciplined. The orthodox Tao begins with the upright conduct of the body and extends to uprightness of the heart. Only then did Li Ziming recall that Taoist Master Q who cultivated the divine ability clear hearing, a fate divine ability of cold essence. She had likely not heard the slightest trace of disrespect from Li Jianqian. He dared not mention whether talisman seeds had played a role and hurriedly said with a smile, I am not worthy of such praise. Let us not keep the two seniors waiting. The two transformed into radiant cold light and appeared within the grand hall on the island in the blink of an eye, where two figures now stood in the once empty space. Lingmei stood naturally in front, his hair and beard half-white. He cradled a snow-white spirit sword with great care. He had a smile on his face and a steady aura, his Taoist robes fluttering as he spoke of something. Taoist Master Kyueki stood behind him, dressed in black. He gave a slight nod, the black cord from earlier tied at his waist. If one had not seen this spirit artifact revealed, no one would have imagined it to be a priceless treasure. When Li Ziming and Ningguan descended onto the island, the small island at the heart of the lake temporarily hosted 4 Taoist masters. Upon seeing Li Ziming, Ling Mei smiled and softly said, Zheajing, it has been a long time. Li Ziming hastily performed a salute and spoke respectfully, Greetings, Senior. I returned in haste from the Eastern Sea and have not yet gone to the Sword Sect to give my thanks. My family's matter regarding Zhaowei was resolved thanks to your gate's intervention. I am deeply grateful. If there is anything you need in the future, or any pills you wish refined, please do not hesitate to instruct me. Ling Mei waved his hand indifferently. You are too polite. Li Ziming guided him to take a seat, while Kyueki spoke with some regret. It is a pity. Zhelu did gain benefits after all, and his divine abilities have grown more and more refined over the years. We failed to heavily injure him this time, and only damaged a few of his eyes. Ling Mei stroked his beard and picked up the conversation. Although I possess the Frosty Absolute Sword, it is truly a struggle to contend with him at the mid-Purple Mansion realm. If Senior Luing were here, Sword Intent and the Frosty Absolute Sword would truly and severely wound that man. The sword cultivator raised his brows and asked, Kyuhu, how is Tinglin? Ningguan briefly recounted the matter, keeping it concise. Only then did Ling Mei nod. Li Ziming, meanwhile, somewhat reluctantly pinched the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc hidden in his sleeve. Such a precious item was naturally not something others would personally ask for, as that would look unseemly. He held it out as he smiled and said, Since the matter is settled, this spirit artifact should be returned to its rightful owner. Kyueki smiled and nodded when the golden disc was taken out, accepting it as he praised. Zheajing is truly formidable. No wonder you could leave Chengxiao's grasp so calmly. Only now that I have seen Zheajing's bright Yang True Fire striking down that merciful one with your palm do I understand just how impressive it is. Li Ziming said modestly, I merely took advantage of the heaven-venerating gate suppressing the merciful one. I cannot compare to the two seniors. Kyueki shook his head, clearly having reached his own judgment, and said in a deep voice, Tinglin will be unable to act for some time, but matters in the north still need to be resolved. Since that is the case, let us all make a trip to my Ziyukui Hui mountain and settle this matter first. He tilted his head slightly and said to Li Ziming, and we can also hand over the pills from the treasury to you along the way. Ningguan seized the opportunity and said, "Speaking of this, Sister Tinglin had originally agreed to help the Li family construct the Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation. The formation foundation was just completed when she was delayed by this matter, but she entrusted it to me before returning to the sect. Moongaze Lake is close to Jiangbei, and this is also an important matter. My strength alone is insufficient. I still need to ask Senior to take a look." Oh, Kyuki laughed softly and shook his head as he said, "That is only natural. Having just made a trip through the north and then returned to the lake, it is only right to lend a hand." Normally, asking Kyuki to take action would never come cheaply, but the Supreme Yang Dao lineage was noble and Ziyukui Dao proud. Having just been assisted in battle, he naturally would not speak of any fees. Ningguan simply took out a jade slip and traced the terrain in midair. "Zheajing, wait a moment as I'll have a chat with the senior first." Both had high attainments in formations. One possessed a deep Dao lineage foundation, while the other was endowed with extraordinary innate ability. As their discussion grew animated, both gained insights and were no longer satisfied with merely gesturing over diagrams. They nodded to Li Ziming and then rode the wind out to conduct a survey, as if Li Ziming's presence no longer mattered at all. This left him both flattered and caught between laughter and tears. Ling Mei took it all in and sighed with a smile. "Kyuki regards you as one of his own. The Supreme Yang Dao lineage was originally very warm toward its own people. If not for the various sects before and after failing to walk the orthodox Dao and hurting the hearts of Ziyukui and Hengzhu, things would not have grown so distant as they are today." Li Ziming nodded inwardly. He had seen Kyuki's attitude before. He had not shown a good face even once to Taoist Master Luo who refined people, let alone the Azure Pond sect of those years. It was no wonder that people's hearts had scattered to this extent. At this point, Li Ziming already had some guesses and asked quietly, "Hengzhu, was it because of Murongzia's southward advance back then, but how did it escalate to such a state?" Ling Mei's expression turned complicated as he shook his head and said, "Zheajing has already reached his current height, so there is no harm in me speaking plainly. When it comes to Murongzia's matter, although Luoxia did not issue a direct decree, the Golden Feather sect and the Azure Pond sect agreed to it, and the division of Jiangbei was settled as well. There was no reason to go back on it. Hengzhu, alas." This matter clearly unsettled Ling Mei and even caused him some pain. He stroked his beard, unwilling to continue on the topic, and instead sighed, "Right now, everyone in the north is guessing at Luing's whereabouts, and turmoil is inevitable. Although this attempt did not succeed, it nearly revealed the full extent of the strength the Supreme Yang side can muster in one go, while their losses only amounted to a few merciful ones. Such incidents will not be rare. Your family's foundation is inferior to theirs. Leave yourself a margin in all matters so you can preserve your own when the time comes." As a cultivator of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, Ling Mei was already showing clear favoritism with these words. Li Ziming nodded in thanks and said with a sigh, "Senior's good intentions are deeply appreciated. This junior will remember them. I wonder whether any disciples from my family might have the opportunity to enter the mountain to cultivate." The sword cultivator stroked his beard and said softly, "Our sword sect ultimately cannot change its long-held habits. Minor adjustments are possible, but nothing that touches the fundamentals. If your esteemed family sends disciples to learn the sword, our sword sect would be most welcoming. However, likewise, the child must be sent at the age of 6 and must sever all mortal ties, taking the observance of moral conduct as the foremost duty. This would likely mean sending one's own disciples away forever. They might even be unable to receive better resources due to various customs, and even sending spirit items from the family to the sect could invite gossip." Li Ziming was naturally unwilling. He paused slightly, smiled, and nodded, only to see Ningguan descending swiftly. Ningguan first paid her respects to Ling Mei, then smiled and said, "Zheajing, these 32 purple stable valley penetrating mountain profound pins have already been finalized. Come and take a look first." Li Ziming was overjoyed and immediately rose on a streak of light. Lifting his head to look around, he saw many purplish gold pillars erected across the island at the heart of the lake. Each was as thick as a house and extended straight toward the sky, radiating intertwined hues of purple and yellow. Chapters 1355, Zheaguang Profound Purple II. It was morning and white mist rose everywhere. The purple stable valley penetrating mountain profound pins crisscrossed, appearing and disappearing within the hazy morning fog. The Li family cultivators standing on the island all wore expressions of amazement. One or two of the bolder ones were riding the wind around the towering, staggered purplish gold pillars. The complex interwoven purplish gold patterns reflected light upon the rooftops of the immortal pavilions below, making them seem small by comparison. The originally serene Pingya Island now appeared mysterious and magnificent between the many profound pillars, its former immortal elegance transformed into a solemn and noble aura of mystery. Li Ziming was already full of praise with these 32 purple stable valley pillars raised but not yet staked into a formation. Ningguang spoke gently. Of these 32 purple stable valley pillars, 16 are on the island and 16 are in the lake along the island's edge. For now, those on the island stand on flat ground at a height of 180 ren. Once driven into the earth, their heights will differ. The tallest will be at the island's center, while those toward the outside will be around 400 meters. The surrounding ones decrease step by step. There are also variations in height according to the earth veins. Overall, the formation light should take on a dome-like shape. The remaining 16 are in the surrounding lake, covering a large area of the water surface, with most of them exposed above the water. These 32 profound pins are the spiritual chi convergence points for the Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation. In the future, pavilions and terraces can also be built upon these pillars. Your esteemed family is situated on an island rather than among mountains. This grand formation was designed by Sister Tinglin with exceptional precision. Such a standard dome shape is rarely seen. It is also a type she excels at, in line with the Purple Smoke Gate. Purple Smoke Blessed Land itself was not built around any particular mountain and bore some resemblance to the island at the heart of the lake. Li Ziming had clearly chosen the right person in seeking out Tinglin. However, his own domain was certainly smaller than a true blessed land, especially in terms of elevation. The island was largely flat, with only a slight rise at its center. After accounting for the formation structure, its effective height would reach around 400 meters. This height could only be considered average, and roughly 1/5 of the height of Mount Zioshi in the north. Although Li Ziming felt it was somewhat low, his family did not possess an immortal mountain to begin with, so a lower height was only natural. He nodded repeatedly. Ningguang continued, the ones by the lakeshore have already been driven in, and the earth veins on the lake have also been surveyed. Right now, they are being held in place by Senior Kyueki with great mana. Once Zheajing gives the word and the people on the island withdraw, the formation can be set. Li Ziming did not expect the 2 Purple Mansion Realm cultivators to be this efficient. He quickly moaned Li Jianqian and had him drive everyone out, nodding slightly to himself. Fortunately, the formation on the lake was still that hastily set up one from early on, with little defensive ability. Our people were all in seclusion at Qingdu. Otherwise, once this formation descended, they would most likely have been affected. Watching the Li family members withdraw in a mix of joy and apprehension, Li Jianqian reported back, and Ningguang said with a smile, "It is just that the previous formation will be smashed to pieces." Li Ziming no longer cared about such things. Moreover, there was no reason to have Kyueki keep holding them up while his own people dismantled them. He waved his hand repeatedly. Ningguang flicked her sleeve, and a surge of cold air shot into the sky. High above, Kyueki formed seals and released his grip. The 32 purple stable valley pillars immediately blazed with interweaving purple and yellow light. The earth veins opened one after another, and streams of pitch-black earth fiend energy surged skyward. Yet after only a brief instant aloft, the 32 colossal structures crashed down. Boom! The tallest purple stable valley profound pin at the center of the lake flooded the area with purple and yellow light. The purple light spread along the heavens, radiating from the center in all directions, forming a purple dome that descended with a thunderous roar. The yellow light, like the veins of leaves, rapidly spread across the inner wall of the purple dome, lighting up each node corresponding to every profound pin. The connection between the Great Void and the manifest world was gradually severed. Through the wondrous operation of the Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation, the inner and outer Great Void were split into two. The mysterious sky, purple as its base with yellow veins, shone to its utmost brilliance before finally fading into transparency. Crash, crash. Due to the changes in the earth veins, the independent formations within the pavilions and halls all failed. The houses and courtyards on the island shattered like window paper before the quake, leaving only the heaven-reaching profound pillars standing upon the island, emitting a dim yellow glow. The Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation is complete. Li Ziming's emotions were surging as admiration filled him. Ningguang listened to the astonished exclamations and cheers coming from both shores, revealed a gentle smile, and offered a salute. Congratulations, Zheajing. Kyueki laughed heartily as he descended from the air. Congratulations, Zheajing. The illusory glow of mana around him had dimmed slightly, clearly showing the heavy expenditure. After all the effort he had put in, Li Ziming hurriedly returned the salute and said with a smile, all thanks to the two Taoist friends. Ningguang smiled in response and said, this formation has not been given a specific name by Sister Tinglin. I ask Zheajing to name it yourself. Li Ziming was in high spirits. He pondered for a moment and looked around. He stroked his beard and said, let it be called the Zheaguang Profound Purple Spirit Formation. This name was not chosen at random. The the various Purple Mansion realm grand formations of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage all bore 4 character titles, followed by the word Spirit Formation. Li Ziming had not added anything extra. Rising in a streak of light, he landed atop the highest pillar, where a small platform had indeed been set. It was covered in dense gray gold patterns. Clearly, the formation plate had already transformed into these runes and been embedded within. It could not be removed without reaching the Purple Mansion realm. Li Ziming lightly brushed his sleeve, refined it with his divine ability, and brought the grand formation under his control. Ningguang said softly, "The formation plate of the grand formation is located on this highest profound pillar. If you need entry or exit command tokens, Zheajing can inscribe them yourself. This grand formation possesses the basic Purple Mansion realm grand formation ability of isolating the Great Void. Following the customs of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, it is divided into inner and outer layers. The inner formation and outer formation are not connected. The inner formation is only the size of a chamber and is suitable for storing treasures, while the outer formation is used for disciples entering and leaving. The grand formation itself has 2 layers of profundity. The first is earth anchoring, which stabilizes the earth veins and gathers spiritual qi. Precisely because its control over the earth veins is extremely strong, the 32 pins can be separated from one another to create 32 types of treasured lands for cultivating disciples. Li Ziming naturally knew where this earth anchoring profundity, which did not quite align with purple essence and bright yang, had come from, and he sighed inwardly. Ningguang continued, "The S. Econd is purple right. The 32 profound pins each release spirit light, which can be gathered together to draw upon the reserves in the treasury and the spiritual qi of the island, condensing the vast valley purple right light to defend against enemies. As for its power, it can be considered fairly standard." She finished thoughtfully. This aspect was modified by Sister Tinglin according to her own ideas. She had many innovative thoughts at numerous nodes. Although the vast valley purple right light exists, these alterations also caused the formation to lose quite a bit of its ability to resist external enemies. Chapter 1356, Ruler of Manifested Mountains and Rivers, I. Li Ziming and Tinglin had finalized the grand formation back then and proposed modifying the Profound Peak Gate's original formation plate. This was naturally the result of Tinglin's alterations. Changxi's grand formation followed the stable Earth Dao and specialized in defense, so it would never have produced such a manifestation of spirit light. Perhaps Ningguang noticed that the traces of these modifications did not fully match the original stable Earth patterns of the formation plate and gained some understanding from it, but she found it inappropriate to say much and simply noted, "One of them is the main command refined by Tinglin within the formation. When Zheajing used his divine ability to summon it, it appeared." Li Ziming naturally understood. He raised his hand lightly, and a vein-like golden light flashed across the sky for an instant as a 20-centimeter-long command token with a purple base and yellow patterns fell into his hand. He was fairly satisfied with the formation. As he took out a jade talisman and used divine ability to inscribe it and connect with the formation, he reflected inwardly. Changxi's gate was also a poor gate that rose from nothing. Its techniques were merely somewhat unique, allowing it to accumulate a bit of wealth. The most valuable thing in the entire Profound Peak Gate was the mountains it moved year after year. The formation plate of Profound Peak Gate was never particularly good to begin with, and it certainly cannot compare with those of the Supreme Yang Dao lineages. This is passable in its current state. After all, when Yehui had attacked the gate itself, there had not been the slightest reaction from the Profound Peak Gate's grand formation, let alone any release of spirit light. Li Ziming was in high spirits. Only then did he see Kueki slowly surveying the area from midair and giving a slight nod. This Taoist master of the great Ziyuqi temple was more direct than Ling Mei and Ningguang. He did not offer many words of congratulations, but instead said softly, "If Zheajing needs to construct any grand formations in the future, you may come find me in Hui Mountain." At this moment, the purple stable valley pillars across the lake were already giving off a faint glow. The sky above seemed unobstructed, yet cultivators around them found it difficult to take even a single step. Li Ziming finished inscribing the jade talisman, granted access to the outer formation, summoned Li Jianqian, and casually handed it over. "I will leave the matters on the lake to you for now. These purple stable valley pillars are protected by a Purple Mansion realm grand formation to prevent internal sabotage and are difficult to approach. First, plan out the surrounding territory. I will return shortly." Although the island at the heart of the lake was in ruins, such matters could be entrusted to Li Jianqian and Li Qian without further instruction. They could not keep the Taoist masters waiting any longer. Li Ziming gestured invitingly, and the 4 of them passed into the Great Void and flew toward the territory of the Great Ziyuqi Temple. Using their Purple Mansion realm divine abilities to traverse the Great Void, They traveled at astonishing speed, despite the steepness of the Great Void and the abundant spiritual energy of Jiangnan. They descended into the temple halls atop Hui Mountain, where several Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were sweeping snow from the long staircase amid a sea of white. When the mountain snow encountered Ningguan, it visibly intensified. Li Ziming glanced at the long staircase halfway up the mountain and saw Qi Juyan waiting beneath the temple steps. The man stood respectfully amid the vast snowfield, likely unmoving for several days, reduced to a thumb-sized black dot among the snowdrifts. Ningguan called out, "Zheajing." Li Ziming took a seat and accepted tea. The sharp-eyed Qi had clearly seen the scene and shook his head with a smile. After so many years, the Qi family remains the same. Unfortunately, after crossing the sea several times, they were gradually frightened out of their wits, and Purple Mansion Realm cultivators have become rare on Changzhou Island. Everyone seeks Bright Yang, yet this open and upright leaves them feeling guilt and fear toward Bright Yang itself. How could they ever obtain it? They might as well cultivate something else. Li Ziming sighed inwardly, unsure how to respond. Qi was likely speaking out of sentiment, but Ling Mei noticed Li Ziming's awkwardness. He reversed the frosty absolute sword in his hand, passed it to Ningguan, and said, "Thanks are owed to Qiuhu, to allow me the fortune of wielding such a spirit sword." Although Ningguan was not afraid that Ling Mei would fail to return the sword, having it in her hands brought greater reassurance. She accepted it with thanks. Qi murmured a few instructions and sent people away, then turned serious as he said, "The matters in Jiangbei are the most urgent right now. Tinglin is injured, the purple smoke-blessed land cannot be mobilized for the time being, and Zhugong's whereabouts are unknown. The affairs along the river will likely still require Qiuhu to oversee. After all, clear hearing is a fate divine ability. For now, we can only rely on you." Ningguan seemed to have anticipated this and replied gently, "I am not afraid to shoulder this matter, but I have not achieved my divine ability for long. It is difficult for me to influence the opposing situation. If the North makes any schemes, I will not be able to withstand them for the time being." "These monks still harbor wicked intentions," Qi sighed and finally showed a trace of displeasure as he replied, "Zhelu will not dare stir trouble for now. You should be even more cautious on your own and not range too far. Those bald monks will have no means to act. With Zheajing on the riverbank, reinforcements can arrive at any time." At this point, he deliberately turned his head and added, "As for Zheajing, there is no need to involve yourself further. You have only just returned to the mainland, so you must be even more wary of others' schemes. Do not touch the affairs of the higher-ups. Simply keep an eye on the movements of the northern Buddhists. After all, Zheajing's heaven-venerating gate is highly effective. If anything happens, we will arrive quickly. Just do not stray too far from Jiangnan." "All right," Li Ziming naturally had no intention of interfering and agreed readily. Ling Mei calmly took a sip of tea and said softly, "There is also the great Konghai Temple in the southern sea at the Azure Pond sect. Although Taoist Master Zhosheng and that Snow Ridge Listening Pine Marten managed to deal with it, Qiuhu cannot divide her attention. If Zheajing has the capacity, lend a hand so that nothing goes wrong." Ningguan replied gently, "If it can be done, that would be best. I have already lent a wisp of divine ability over there." Li Ziming raised his head in slight confusion, while Ling Mei continued ever softer. The great Konghai Temple seized the southern sea, and Qiuhu was unable to rescue it in time. Two Taoist masters from the southern border intervened out of regard for Taoist Master Yunxiu. One cultivated Jade True, making transformations as real as reality itself. The other was a demon cultivator of cold essence who blocked Beiyaqing. That Maha sensed something amiss and immediately retreated. Having taken the southern sea, the temple master of Konghai Temple is already satisfied, but Beiyaqing has both karmic destiny and personal grudges with the three Yuans. He will certainly come to seek revenge. Ling Mei seemed somewhat contemplative as he continued, "Although that demonic creature spoke fiercely, this karmic destiny cannot be severed." The sword cultivator's expression was complex as he said softly, "You have only seen Yuanwu in his frail old age. Back then, he was also extremely arrogant. As the senior brother among the three Yuans, clad in iron wings, silver robes, and black brocade boots embroidered with gold, he stepped directly onto another's face before thousands of cultivators at Stone Pond while holding the all-encompassing vast treasure pagoda and forced them to say that Buddhism was inferior to the immortal Tao. At that time, Yuansu and Yunxiu were already deeply at odds, to the point of open hostility. Beiyaqing foolishly blundered into it. Yunxiu even joked that one talisman would suffice and smashed Beiyaqing to death with his golden talisman. If the temple master of Konghai Temple had not personally intervened, Beiyaqing would not even have had a chance to reincarnate with Yuansu present. Qi stood to the side. Although his brows were tightly furrowed, he could only say with a sigh, "Although I do not like Yuanwu, that action truly vented some anger. My master, Grand Taoist Master Luing, even praised him at the time. It was precisely because arrogant people shared similar temperaments that Yuanwu ended up associating with Sidu Tang." Li Ziming had little memory of Yuanwu, recalling only Yu Muxian under his command. At the time, he and the Tang family had exerted immense pressure on the Li family. He had never Amagi. Ned that Yuanwu had been so rampant in his youth and sighed. Year after year, how many heavenly talents have risen. Huiki turned his head slightly and saw a woman approaching through the snow nearby, holding a black treasure box in her hands. Huiki casually took it, placed it before Li Ziming, and said with a smile, "This is the Kilin Radiance Illumination Pill. It is an item from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven and was also the spirit pill consumed by the Bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm cultivators of the past. My family ancestor has examined it. This pill can repair the Dharma body and suffuse the front and back with radiance. Whether for comprehension, healing, or cultivation, it is highly useful. However, this spirit pill focuses on gentle nourishment. Its strength lies in steady, unbroken efficacy, so it is not suitable for use during combat. Zheajing should take note of this." Li Ziming nodded repeatedly. He was not lacking pills for combat at the moment, so he was naturally delighted. He carefully took the box and opened it, revealing 3 golden spirit pills inside, each inscribed with white Kilin-like patterns. Although many years had passed, the pills retained abundant spiritual qi due to excellent preservation and looked exceptionally fine. The alchemy methods of Eastern Fire are truly impressive. They possess a unique kind of elegance, Li Ziming remarked with feeling. Seeing Huiki bring out the pill, Ningguan paused slightly and said softly, "Speaking of this, I once heard my family elders mention that there was also a spirit flower in the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven back then. It was said to bloom and wither each year, its fallen petals turning into beetle-like insects. It was obtained by Taoist master Qiushui at the time. Now it lies in the Golden Feather sect, along with a Kilin Radiance refining method. It should be this very Kilin Radiance illumination pill." What? Hearing this made Li Ziming envious. The Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven had yielded so many bright yang items back then, each extraordinary, yet his own side had not received a share. He could not help but ask, "There were many bright yang spirit artifacts in the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven. Do you know how they were divided at the time and which families they went to? I still do not possess a suitable spirit artifact since my breakthrough. I should exchange for 1 or 2. Huiki seemed to have anticipated this question and replied softly, "I was guarding fellow cultivators in the Great Void at the time of the Eastern Fire Affair and did not personally take part, so my gains were limited. The main beneficiaries were the Golden Feather sect and the Azure Pond sect. Mount Changhui, Purple Smoke Gate, Chunyi Dao Gate, and the Chen family all gained something as well. The Profound Peak Gate and Crimson Reef Island controlled several sea entrances and took some leftovers." What? Most of these names were unsurprising, but the inclusion of Chunyi Dao Gate and the Chen family gave Li Ziming some pause. Ningguan understood the matter better and added, "The 3 sects and 7 gates all sent disciples to take a share, but what they obtained were mostly inconsequential items. What truly mattered was the portion left after the Lord took the main peak, as well as several important side peaks." In total, 3 spirit artifacts and 2 spirit embryos were obtained. The spirit artifacts were divided among Mount Changhui, the Azure Pond sect, and the Golden Feather sect. 1 spirit embryo went to Chunyi Dao Gate, and the other is in Purple Smoke Gate's hands. In the Azure Pond sect's hands. At the time, Yuanxiu was in seclusion, and the Azure Pond sect was represented by Taoist Master Yuansu. That meant the item had fallen into the Ning family's hands. Li Ziming's eyes lit up, though he secretly wondered, Tinglin has one as well, she never mentioned it. What the Azure Pond sect possessed was a spirit artifact, while the spirit embryo in Purple Smoke Gate's hands still required nurturing and was naturally inferior. Although a spirit embryo refined by the Qi family would certainly be far superior to Li Ziming's own crude efforts, a spirit artifact was undeniably better. He immediately asked, "That spirit artifact?" Chapter 1357, Ruler of Manifested Mountains and Rivers, II. Ningguan shook her head slightly in embarrassment and replied, "My family elder obtained a bright yang spirit artifact, but it did not suit their use and did not match my cold essence. It was therefore exchanged with the Southern Shun Raksha King of Songzhu in return for my current protective treasure." After all, spirit artifacts carried certain secrets. Although Ningguan did not state it outright, she possessed many fine items as the inheritor of Yuansu's legacy. After a moment she continued, "Sister Tinglin's spirit embryo is indeed good, but it does not belong to the Bright Yang Dao, since Purple Smoke Gate had the right of first choice. They naturally selected the more suitable one. The one left in Chunyi Dao Gate's hands is Bright Yang." Li Ziming did not find this regrettable. With Yuansu nearing his end, everything must have been arranged long ago, and he would not have kept a spirit artifact for himself. Since it was all a matter of exchange, knowing its whereabouts was enough. He murmured, "Then it must be one of the Golden Feather sect, Songzhu, or Chunyi Dao Gate." The Golden Feather sect possessed an abundance of treasures, but Li Ziming judged that he had nothing that could truly move them. Songzhu and Chunyi Dao, on the other hand, seemed easier to negotiate with, so he asked, the Southern Shun Raksha king, what kind of figure is he? What Dao lineage does he cultivate? As soon as Li Ziming asked, Ling Mei stroked his beard and replied, I know him. He is a mid-stage Purple Mansion realm cultivator and the Grand King of Songzhu. His influence has expanded rapidly in recent years, and he has become a serious threat to Thunder Island. If not for the fact that he cultivates the shamanic talisman Dao, and that the Miao family cultivates lightning, which restrains him somewhat, Thunder Island would have already been pushed to extinction. You can consider approaching from this angle. As for Chunyi Dao, they regard themselves as the orthodox Supreme Yin lineage and are quite rule-bound. Items of the bright Yang Dao do not suit them well, and a spirit embryo is also less valuable than a spirit artifact. In my view, it may even be easier to obtain. The connections of the Supreme Yang Dao lineages were naturally beyond what Li Ziming could match on his own. With Kueki and the others making introductions, it might become much easier. Li Ziming nodded repeatedly and replied, when the time comes, I will have to trouble you all. He paused briefly, then continued politely, in that case, if there is no spirit embryo available, do you fellow Taoists have any bright Yang ancient Dharma artifacts that I could study? Li Ziming had already made his plans. He had obtained the refining fire in the viewing pavilion from Changxi, and the high platform by the shore had also been completed. Regardless of whether he obtained a spirit artifact or a spirit embryo, refining one himself would never be wrong. That meant he needed to think carefully about the spirit embryo, and using an ancient Dharma artifact would certainly be best. This surprised the group somewhat, because cultivators of the Supreme Yang Dao lineages usually selected an ancient Dharma artifact as early as the Foundation Establishment realm, and used it all the way into the Purple Mansion realm. It was like Li Xiaowei, who, if he were planning to break through to the Purple Mansion realm, could immediately begin refining the Dusheng halberd into a spirit embryo. Yet as soon as he finished speaking, all three nodded almost simultaneously. Kueki even raised his brows and smiled. Yu, bring out the bright Yang ancient Dharma artifacts from the treasury. The black-robed Taoist who had been wiping a Dharma sword on the highest stone steps immediately stood and saluted. Kueki nodded and said, we already had ancient Dharma artifacts back then. Our household should be considered well-stocked with a total of 3. Zheajing may choose one. There is no need to be polite. Since he had spoken so quickly, Ning Wan and the others could only let it be. Ancient Dharma artifacts were not like ordinary Dharma artifacts of today. Their numbers were limited, and even among Purple Mansion realm cultivators, there was no precedent for gifting them so casually. Li Ziming was taken aback and shook his head. There is no reason for me to accept Ziyuqi's gifts for nothing. Kueki laughed heartily, stood up, and said with a hint of delight, since all fellow Taoists are gathered here today, I will not say much. I will certainly not treat you unfairly. Not only will you be allowed to choose one item, I will also gift you a strand of spiritual essence, a bright Yang provision. A sharp glint flashed through his eyes as he spoke seriously. My Ziyuqi wants Fei Qingya. Once these words were spoken, Li Ziming finally understood. The Li family had been associated with a true monarch and brought back Fei Qingya. Although she was a problem at present, once the true monarch departed, she could very well become a valuable asset. Ziyuqi was clearly tempted. Ling Mei was not surprised. He had come to the same conclusion as Li Ziming. Ning Wan, having only recently broken through to the Purple Mansion realm and lacking understanding of these matters, looked thoughtful. Kueki smiled and said, I had thought that if she did not cultivate cold essence, she would cultivate purple essence. I never expected that when the two of you were trapped in the north, she ended up cultivating pit water through a twist of fate, with Zio shooting in the northern sea as well, such a fine sea. Edling seems destined to belong to my Ziyuqi. There were many subordinate Taoist temples beneath the great Ziyuqi temple. They did not only cultivate the Ziyuqi Dao, but also focused on pit water and the shamanic talisman Dao. Li Ziming immediately began to calculate. If Fei Qingya was not killed, it would still be very inconvenient to keep her within the family. Although she currently held the Li family in high regard, she bore the Fei surname and had the potential to reach the Purple Mansion realm. The Fei family was also entangled with the troubles of the Sima family. Once her cultivation rose, there was no telling how many matters would be dragged into the open. More importantly, the impression Su Zio had left was far too deep, and Li Ziming still harbored misgivings. His talisman seeds and Dharma mirror were major secrets. If an external Purple Mansion realm cultivator like this emerged, many things would become impossible to conceal. If the Fei family developed ambitions, they could waver between friend and foe, or even break away entirely. As for marriage alliances, Li Ziming had considered it as well. However, she was a woman of a great figure. If she married into the Li family, it would amount to offending a true monarch. it might well be unprecedented in all ages. Sending her into a supreme Yang Dao lineage would instead allow him to form ties with a future Taoist master. The only concern remaining was if she remained in Ziyuqi Dao Gate and achieved success in cultivation. If the Fei family came seeking favors, the involvement of a supreme Yang Dao lineage would make any turmoil far more dangerous. Li Ziming had lingering worries, but with Qiki having spoken so far, he could only say with a sigh, "It is not that I refuse. I fear that her worldly attachments will be hard to sever, and that she will be unable to focus on cultivation after entering the mountains, wasting your gate's provisions." Qiki caught the implication and smiled. Zhejiang may rest assured. Our Dao has clear vows upon entering the temple to clarify the mind and attain the Dao, pledging not to let family ties obstruct the Dao. As for the Fei family, my coastal prefecture is full of mountain ranges. There is no lack of space for a single family. They can be relocated to the coast and, according to custom, settled within the deep forests and established as a temple. Clearly, although the main Taoist masters of the great Ziyuqi temple all bore the Lin surname, and clans held sway under their rule, the Taoist temples scattered across the land were not merely ornamental. Li Ziming nodded and replied after some consideration, "That would be good. It is just that she originates from Moongaze Lake, and my family customarily sends provisions each year. I do not know whether your temple has regulations regarding whether they can be accepted." This would reinforce goodwill from the Li family, and it also revealed how much importance Ziyuqi placed on Fei Qingye. Qiki raised his brows and replied briskly, "No problem." Li Ziming judged that the Lin family had its own pillar figures, and that Fei Qingye was merely an added bonus. He relaxed considerably. At that moment, a black-robed Taoist approached holding a jade tray. There were 3 treasures on the tray: a ring suffused with lingering heavenly light, a long spear of slender and elegant form, and a Dharma ruler resembling green jade. The black-robed Taoist presented the 3 ancient Dharma artifacts before them and bowed respectfully. He first pointed to the ring. 3 points of radiant light gleamed upon it, its body of gold and jade, as he said respectfully, "This is the outer frontier ring. It is an ancient Dharma artifact that the Grand Taoist Master obtained from the northern Buddhists in his early years, dating roughly to the early Liang era. It can dissipate mana and transform into light to escape." The 3 points of radiant light upon the ring can transform into 3 streams of heavenly light to fend off enemies. This ring was capable of both offense and defense, and was exceedingly ornate. It was clearly an auxiliary Dharma artifact, once carried by nobles of the Wei state royal families. The Taoist then picked up the spear and said respectfully, "This is the heaven-piercing radiant spear. It was obtained from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven. Its age is indeterminate, but it is at least earlier than the Liang and after Emperor Gong. It can transform into light to pierce and wound enemies. It possesses formidable power, though it places certain demands on weapon technique." The remaining jade ruler was gentle and lustrous. It was over a foot long and engraved with patterns of mountains and rivers. He said, "This item is the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers. It is also from Eastern Fire and dates even earlier, likely before Wei Emperor Gong. It can summon mountains and rivers to cover an area, empower the user within it, move upon heavenly light, and also perceive the movements of enemies." Li Ziming glanced over them. As expected of the great Ziyuqi temple's collection, none of the 3 items were simple. The Taoist had only given a brief description, but each possessed deeper mysteries. Since he cultivated the bright Yang Dao, Li Ziming could discern most of it at a glance. That ring is likely the most valuable. Its functions are comprehensive and very useful for Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, but I have already cultivated a divine ability. Even if it were refined into a spirit embryo, I already possess many of its functions. It does not truly stand out. This spear is an offensive weapon tied to weapon technique rather than profound arts. It would be fine for practicing spells, but I have never been fond of spears or swords since childhood. To start training them only after reaching Purple Mansion realm would be laughable, even if my divine ability is clear and not inferior to ordinary cultivators. This ruler is steady and dignified, though some of its profundities overlap slightly with heaven-venerating gate. After surveying them all, he naturally judged these Dharma artifacts with the discerning eye of a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Hearing Ningwan's evident admiration, he knew that even the Azure Pond sex items could not compare. He reached out and picked up the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers. Qiki took a sip of tea and explained casually, "This ruler of manifested mountains and rivers is of very exacting specifications. It was likely a plaything of an imperial scion who had the qualifications to compete for the heir position. As such, it is refined but lacks divine might. Once its spirit embryo is supplemented, it can be put to use." Measures about 40 centimeters in length, 2.7 centimeters thick, and 4 centimeters wide. The material is Crane River Azure Jade, which is now nowhere to be found and extremely fine. The tail is carved with yang apex, while the head with heavenly radiance. Mountains and rivers are depicted, but no deities are inscribed. It is only one step short of the specifications of Wei Crown Prince. He clearly had deep knowledge of the Dharma artifacts in his treasury and looked at the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers with some reluctance, revealing a trace of emotion. He continued, "At that time, I had been punished and sent to guard the treasury. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was on the 3 platforms to the left. I often wondered whether he ever took that final step. The owner of such an elegant Dharma artifact should have brought the Wei state a long period of peace." Li Ziming nodded. No wonder the Dharma ruler felt unexpectedly heavy in his hand. Since its material surpassed the other two, it also meant a higher upper limit and greater suitability as a spirit embryo. This neatly filled the regret he had felt earlier. Feeling at ease, he smiled and said, "My thanks to you for making this possible." Kyuki smiled and waved his hand. He turned and gave an order, "Go bring the spiritual essence." The black-robed Taoist immediately withdrew. Li Ziming gently stroked the warm, smooth surface of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers and found himself liking it more and more. The Wei and Li styles were nothing more than 2 types, either domineering and fierce or calm and grand. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was clearly the latter, making it hard for him to put down. This will be my first Purple Mansion Realms spirit embryo. Chapter 1358, Viewing Pavilion I. As Li Ziming pondered many matters, the black-robed Taoist stepped up from the side. This time, a circular ink-black stone pillar, no larger than a palm, rested upon the jade tray. Its center was concave, revealing a dazzling expanse of radiant light. This was the primary compensation the great Ziyuqi Temple was providing for taking Fei Qingye away. Kyuki nodded at the item. This was something I personally obtained earlier in the Southern Sea. It was originally a spirit stone called Guarding toward the White Yang. However, during the struggle to seize it, the spirit stone suffered some damage. One corner broke off, and its essence began to rapidly leak away. I brought it back then, but seeing its condition worsen by the day, I asked others to refine it, supplementing it with many spirit items to regulate it. In the end, I obtained a pool of spiritual essence. This is one portion of it. It counts as a form of spiritual resource and retains many of the effects of that spirit stone. Aside from standard bright Yang divine abilities, it is a rare bright Yang spirit item capable of inscribing talismans. Among bright Yang spirit items, only the radiant sky stone would likely have effects surpassing it. He paused slightly and deliberately reminded, Zheajing will need to refine a spirit embryo upon returning, and Brightya NG provisions will naturally be indispensable. This item can be used along the way. Li Ziming naturally had no objections. Since it was in substantial quantities, he nodded repeatedly and flipped his hand to store it away. The 3 then discussed esoteric matters for a while, and after finishing a pot of tea, they prepared to depart. Li Ziming called Kui Juyan over. The man bowed to the 4 Taoist masters and then stood behind Li Ziming. Ling Mei, who held the highest status in their company, said in a steady voice, Qiu has only just escaped danger, and Zheajing has only recently returned. Both should remain to stabilize their respective areas. Our sword gate also cannot be away for long. If there is any news in the future, everyone may gather again at Hui Mountain. Kyuki returned the salute with a smile and saw the 3 off. As he watched them disappear into the vast white snow, he finally relaxed somewhat, then turned to look at the black-robed Taoist, his voice low. The black chi is spreading through the profound spider cave. Although it is being suppressed by unfixed mountain, it is visible across the various caves. Has there been any reaction? The Taoist replied softly, none so far. However, there was news today. The Lingu family came to inquire about Lingu Lanying and Lingu Rao after hearing word. Kyuki sighed, speaking with some regret. I told Lingu Rao back then that the coming decades would not be suitable for a breakthrough. He insisted on acting alone, and there was nothing to be done. Send his remains back to the Lingu family. Now it depends on Lingu Lanying. One may look down on the individual Northern Buddhist, but not the Northern Buddhist forces. If she succeeds, it will add another trump card. Yes, the black-robed Taoist Huyu lowered his gaze and said, Lingu Lanying has a close bloodline and greatly resembles that lady from back then, which is why the Grand Taoist Master favored her. At the time, he even bestowed a spirit item upon her. I also heard that the Grand Taoist Master once held her hand and taught her the subtleties of various spirit artifacts. As for the painting he created during the Northern and Southern conflict, it has been continuously nurtured and was also given to her. I understand. Kyuki seemed somewhat melancholic. He paced a few steps in the snow and said with a sigh, Master is a man of deep sentiment. Otherwise, he would not have cared for them over centuries and raised the Lingu family to its current state. He even worries that his lifespan is running short, and thinks it best to help the Lingu family produce a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. When Lingu Rao entered the grotto heaven back then, death was inevitable. It was Master who intervened to save him. In the end, it still proved insufficient, leaving only Lingu Lanying. As the foremost figure of the great Ziyuqi temple, Luing had traveled thousands of kilometers to reach the grotto heaven, all to rescue a mere foundation establishment realm cultivator of Mount Yue bloodline. The favoritism was obvious. The two exchanged a glance and fell silent, with the rest of their thoughts left unspoken. The Lin family has no shortage of Purple Mansion realm cultivators, yet there are only few chances to meet them. The Lingu family, on the other hand, has had one cultivator elevated after another, and is finally about to produce a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. But will this Purple Mansion Realm cultivator belong to the Azure Pond sect or to the great Ziyuqi temple? The supreme Yang Dao lineage was of one breath and one branch, and the great Ziyuqi temple was brimming with talent as it stood at its peak. Qiuqi stood upright and feared no shadows, and he did not particularly mind this Purple Mansion Realm cultivator ending up with the Azure Pond sect. It might even turn out to be a good thing. Yet, judging from Luing's intentions, this grand Taoist master who had comprehended sword intent would likely have to allocate many spirit artifacts to the Lingu family. This would be a grievous blow for the great Ziyuqi temple. With Qiuqi's conservative and stubborn temperament, it was even harder for him to watch such a thing happen without reacting. Qiuqi not only had to worry about Luing's lifespan and secretly search for all manner of life-extending items, but also had to contend with the favoritism of this grand Taoist master who had grown more willful with age and more inclined to act according to his heart. None of these grievances could be spoken aloud, leaving Qiuqi with a heavy sense of bitterness. If Qiuqi were truly ruthless, then Lingu Lanying would certainly have no chance of breaking through successfully once Luing died. Yet out of respect for his master and his own pride, he kept all such thoughts buried in his heart, leaving only a sigh. An elder's favoritism is common enough. It is just that Lingu Lanying has no feelings toward Hui Mountain. Once she receives her share of spirit artifacts, she will be even more guarded against us and will surely remain with the Azure Pond sect. Even if Ningguan were willing, whether it is the Lingu family or Lanying herself, how could they give up the rich benefits of Simen Prefecture and the Azure Pond sect and willingly submit themselves in humility? Li Ziming and Ningguan traveled north together, with Qi Juyin quietly following them. After crossing the territory of the Azure Pond sect, this foremost beauty of the Azure Pond sect, now having cultivated a divine ability, was breathtaking with every glance. She sighed and said, "The spiritual aura along the shore is somewhat strange. I only hope that nothing has happened to the Grand Taoist Master." Li Ziming had heard mention of the Grand Taoist Master Luing many times, and even Yuandao had shown concern back then, so he naturally offered reassurance. If something had truly happened to the Grand Taoist Master, Zhelu would not dare to provoke him. It is precisely because the Grand Taoist Master is unharmed and racing against time to cultivate a divine ability, unable to risk injury, that Zhelu dares to act. There was logic in his words. A Grand Taoist Master on the verge of falling was the most terrifying of all. Li Ziming had sensed no great urgency from Yuandao's tone at the time, making it the most reliable information. Ningguan nodded and smiled as she said, "Senior Qiuqi is warm-hearted and actually very attentive. Although Zheajing's talisman arts are not profound, the spiritual essence of guarding toward the white yang can be used to temper a spirit embryo. Whether one seeks out a Taoist master skilled in artifact refinement or refines it personally, it will still prove useful." At this point her expression shifted slightly as she added, "After all, the sooner it is refined, the better." Li Ziming immediately understood her meaning. At present, he stood on the side of the supreme Yang Dao lineage. Qiuqi's repeated displays of enthusiasm, even to the point of sharing all information about bright Yang spirit artifacts, were clearly intended to raise Li Ziming's strength as much as possible within a short time. This spirit embryo was one such measure. The great Ziyuqi temple might lack bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm spirit items, but there was certainly no shortage of bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm provisions among the remnants of the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven. So why choose the spiritual essence of guarding toward the white Yang in particular? Was it for talisman inscription? If it were for talisman work, was the great Ziyuqi temple not already adept at it? Things one excels at were naturally treasured more. Why would they instead give it to Li Ziming? It had been given precisely because the spiritual essence of guarding toward the white yang was more suitable for enhancing a spirit embryo. The earlier Li Ziming refined his spirit embryo, the sooner he would grow immediately stronger. By contrast, spirit items meant to aid long-term cultivation would take at least 10 or 20 years to show results. Li Ziming indicated that he understood. Although he was not skilled in artifact refinement, he had the divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire in hand. Adding the spiritual essence of guarding toward the White Yang did not require a trip to the Golden Feather Sect or Hengzhu Dao Gate, making matters much easier. He smiled and said, I have heard that the Ning family has a guest cultivator named Chu Minglian, who also cultivates radiant fire. I have constructed a ritual platform to refine the spirit embryo, and when I am not present, I will still need a master skilled in artifact refinement to oversee it. Ning Wan immediately understood and said gently, I will send him. Li Ziming offered his thanks. It was rare for so many good things to occur at once since reaching the Purple Mansion realm, leaving him smiling all the way. After crossing the wilderness, he and Ning Wan exchanged jade talismans so they could warn and aid each other at any time, after which she headed toward Lake Xi'an. Li Ziming rode upon heavenly light and returned with Qi Juyin, flying all the way back over the lake. Below them, the cultivators were still immersed in joy and admiration, whispering among themselves, while nearby small families sent people to curry favor, their eyes filled with envy and awe. The crowd gathered in small groups of 3 to 5, and in an instant, streaks of escaping light filled the lake. Li Ziming traversed the great void in silence and landed beside a formation platform at a higher elevation. He finally had the chance to examine the formation plate before him. Vast valley, purple bright light. He gently raised his hand, and thin wisps of purple-yellow light descended from the sky, most no larger than willow leaves. They circled and gathered in Li Ziming's hand. Behind him, Qi Juyin felt a suffocating pressure, as if even a light touch from those willow leaf-sized rays could reduce him to ashes. The power is decent, carrying some qualities of entanglement and imprisonment and an unending flow. Although it cannot compare to the bright Yang killing light, it still surpasses the vast majority of Dharma lights. If a merciful one were caught off guard by this move, he would be injured. As for dealing with a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, it can only serve to restrain. One cannot expect it to inflict lethal damage. Unfortunately, it is ultimately a Purple Mansion realm grand formation. A group of Foundation Establishment realm cultivators can rely on the formation to resist other Purple Mansion realm cultivators when I am absent, but without the ability to traverse the Great Void, they naturally cannot use this profound light to harm others. Even whether Foundation Establishment realm cultivators can properly control such profundity is questionable. The gulf between the Purple Mansion realm and Foundation Establishment realm was like a natural chasm. Li Ziming casually dispersed the light and turned as he said, have the Foundation Establishment realm cultivators on the lake come to the viewing pavilion to see me. After speaking, he transformed into heavenly light and vanished. The viewing pavilion stood beneath Chengqing Gate. It consisted of one main platform and 12 subsidiary towers and formed the foundation of the divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire. It was originally a project of immense cost and had long since been completed. It was now guarded by heavy forces and reinforced by formations. No one had ever ascended it. Li Ziming traversed the great void and appeared atop the main platform of the viewing pavilion. It was dawn, with cold winds blowing in gusts. Black and red banners fluttered atop the 12 surrounding subsidiary towers. A celestial altar stood tall in the center of the main platform. As Li Ziming strolled upward, he could see the pavilions on the distant lake. Viewing Pavilion, the name is not inaccurate. Chapter 1359, Viewing Pavilion, II. In just a short moment, Li Jianqian and the others arrived at full speed. They bowed upon the platform with joyful expressions and spoke in unison, "Greetings, Taoist Master." Li Ziming swept his gaze around and counted the number of people. At first glance, he saw Ding Weizeng kneeling excitedly at the front and nodded. He also saw Li Qiuwen, Xia Xiaoyu and others, and felt slightly moved. There are already so many Foundation Establishment realm cultivators under my command. However, since the earlier the spirit embryo was refined, the faster he would be able to use it. Li Ziming did not waste words and immediately began making arrangements. The divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire, required 12 Foundation Establishment realm cultivators corresponding to the 12 subsidiary towers. They were arranged in alternating groups of 6, taking turns to perform the refinement. Of course, if manpower were sufficient, 24 subsidiary towers could be built, allowing for faster refinement. He immediately began calling names: Jade True Li Wen and Ensiwei True Essence White Ape, Bright Yang Qi Juyin, True Fire Li Minggong, Hengzhu Ding Weizeng, Hornwood Sun Bai, Dry Fire Xia Xiaoyu. Aside from the 2 direct talisman seed disciples, who need not spend time here, there were already 8 cultivators whose attributes did not conflict with Bright Yang and were even beneficial. Li Ziming considered briefly and asked, what of the 2 Foundation Establishment realm cultivators from back then, Wenyi and Wenshan, how are they now? Wenyi and Wenshan were devil cultivators from the Eastern Sea. They had been captured by the Li family back then, and Li Ziming had suppressed them with a divine ability, locking them on the western shore to refine artifacts day after day with mana. Many years had passed by now, but Li Jianqian reported respectfully, "These two brothers are already fortunate to have salvaged their lives. They have kept their heads down and behaved themselves over the years. They have been fairly diligent. Then transfer them over." These two belonged to Suomo Ridge and were not an ideal match, but they would at least help make up the numbers, bringing the total to 10. As for the remaining two, Kabuzhai was needed to inquire into matters in the north. After some thought, Li Ziming could only choose Fei Qingyi of Cold Essence and Mayaoshui of Converging Water. Although these two were not a great fit and their effect would be inferior to the others, it was still necessary to gather all 12 people. The secret art specifically warned that among bright yang types, categories such as veiled yin could not be used, and pit water was also unsuitable, leaving Chen Yang unable to participate. With the orders given, the foundation established. NT Realm cultivators each took their positions on the platform. Li Ziming reached into his sleeve and took out the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers. In truth, the Li family still possessed several other treasures. One was the Sunseeker ring of unknown grade, but it had once triggered a resonance with the immortal mirror, so the Li family no longer dared to take it out. It had been kept at the bottom of a chest and never used again. Second was the ancient Dharma artifact known as the Profound Pattern Bottle, which could undergo different transformations according to different Dao lineages and was extremely wondrous. Whether it could be refined into a spirit embryo was still uncertain, since different mana produced different effects that did not resemble bright yang. If it were refined and then could not be nurtured, it would only invite ridicule. Moreover, it had already been taken away and used by Li Xiaowei. After weighing everything, the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was the safest and already an excellent choice. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers had long since been refined with his bright yang divine ability. It now released gentle heavenly light and quietly descended onto the central celestial platform as Li Ziming flicked his finger. Boom! Red and white flashes erupted as brilliant golden flames mixed with bright yang purple flames surged, forming a sphere of light atop the celestial platform. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers blazed with radiance as the 12 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators circulated their techniques at once. 12 luminous channels lit up on the main platform, stabilizing the flames. Now that the platform was activated, 6 of them could rest while awaiting rotation, easing the strain on manpower. Li Ziming first measured with the heavenly light divine ability at his brow, calculating the amount and timing of radiant fire and baleful qi needed over the next 3 days. He handed a jade slip to the descending Li Minggong with brief instructions and said, "I will leave the viewing pavilion in your care. Among everyone here, you cultivate true fire and have some understanding of artifact refinement, and you can grasp the timing of each step. You will oversee the replenishment of radiant fire and baleful qi first." Once Chu Minglian of the Ning family arrived, Li Ziming could almost let go of the process entirely. He thought, although Minggong cultivates true fire and can attempt artifact refinement, her innate ability is not high. Chu Minglian has had ties with my family for many years. He might even pick up a bit of the Dao lineage this time. After arranging matters concerning the spirit embryo, he rode the light and descended on Zhaijing Mountain with Li Jianqian and the others. Within just a few days, the Li family had set up formations and begun refining a spirit embryo. There was an entirely new atmosphere around the lake. Li Jianqian hesitated as if he had something to say, but due to the successive changes he first saluted, reporting to the Taoist master, "The viewing pavilion consumes manpower heavily, almost emptying the lake of Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. I do not know how many years the refinement will take." Spirit embryo was not as troublesome or demanding as a spirit artifact. After all, once refined, it only required constant nurturing to maintain its Purple Mansion Realm inherent rank. Li Ziming estimated that even a Purple Mansion Realm without a corresponding Dao lineage could finish refining it within a few decades. Even if the quality were poorer, it would still be a spirit embryo. With the ancient method of the divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire, and the use of 12 Foundation Establishment cultivators, the time should be shortened to within 8 years. More importantly, there was the spiritual essence of guarding toward the white yang given by Kueki. Although it had not yet been used, the fact that Kueki had specifically mentioned it suggested that it would greatly benefit the spirit embryo. Zhaijing Mountain did not lack radiant fire and baleful qi, and with Purple Mansion Realm true fire to support it, Li Ziming simply replied, "Just wait for a while. It will not take more than a few years. Bring out the bright yang provisions at home to take a look and finish the refinement as soon as possible." Li Jianqian acknowledged the order, while Li Qian said softly, "Taoist master, the 16 pillars on the island have already had their boundaries delineated. The earth veins have shifted, and whether it is the former spirit fields or the flow of spiritual energy, everything has changed completely. The cave dwellings and palaces can no longer be used. We are now remeasuring the spirit veins and earth veins to redesign the palace layout. Li Ziming nodded. Li Jianqian then reported on the cultivation progress of several members of the F. Emily, mentioning that Li Xinghan, Li Zhaoda, and his two younger brothers Li Jianglong and Li Jiangxia were all in seclusion attempting breakthroughs. Li Ziming was very satisfied and replied, "Nowadays, the essence gathering pill holds no secrets for our family. The aptitude of the direct bloodline has steadily improved, and the probability of reaching Foundation Establishment Realm is quite high. However, restraint is still necessary. Foundation Establishment Realm is valued for quality, not quantity. Supporting them is a massive expense. Whether it is spiritual energy or provisions, each further step requires an enormous amount. Those with poorer aptitude are even more demanding. Our family has 16 prefectures and 2 mountains. Zhaijing Mountain barely suffices for my own cultivation. Even counting the vast Milan Mountain, we can comfortably sustain about 30 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators at most. Once the number of direct lineage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators is sufficient, the granting of essence gathering pills must be done with great care." In truth, Li Ziming harbored even greater worries. The Li family's rapid expansion in strength was not a good thing, and the number of subordinate branches and mountain holdings was steadily increasing. He thus said softly, "Let us wait for a few of them to emerge from seclusion first, then discuss further." He flicked his sleeve as he asked, "How are things along the riverbanks?" Li Jianqian replied respectfully, "The changes have been extremely drastic. First, on the Jiangnan side, Taoist Master Zhugong has gone missing and her soul lamp dimmed. The Grace Covenant Gate was already a loosely organized faction, and with such an incident occurring so suddenly, not only did the lower ranks each speak with their own voice, even the direct lineages developed conflicts among themselves. The whole gate is nearly paralyzed, and the hostility between factions is intense. It is said they are on the verge of fighting." Li Jianqian had never thought highly of the Grace Covenant Gate. As expected, once Taoist Master Zhugong vanished, those below were nearly drawing blades against one another. As for the capital Immortal Dao, all the prefectures and cities under its rule are now gripped by fear. They are being toyed with by a group of unknown figures. Guan Gongxiao sends letters almost every few days. Now that he has heard our family has established a Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation, he has guessed part of the truth and has written several letters in succession asking our family for help. Li Ziming nodded without committing himself and replied, "Continue." "And there is also the Locust Soul Hall. The situation there is even worse. We received reports of the Black Rat Taoist being killed, which was not unusual, but news I obtained early on indicates that Taoist Bai was also killed. Even the legendary Miffin command token vanished without a trace. Although the few Dharma protectors under his command tried to seal off the news immediately, that faction leaks like a sieve, and before long everyone knew." "Taoist Bai died ahead of time," said Li Ziming. "That is correct. It is said that his soul was utterly dispersed before his death. It seemed that all his mana and blood energy were completely drained, without even the slightest phenomenon manifesting. If not for the drifting garments and fallen Dharma artifacts, the people of the Locust Soul Hall would have thought he had departed silently." Li Ziming was taken aback and frowned as he said, "Sigh, so it seems Purple Smoke Gate's stage has finally been smashed to pieces." With matters unfolding this way, a sense of unease slowly rose in Li Ziming's heart. Ningguan was not only different from Tinglin in temperament, but also in circumstance. If he were in Ningguan's position, aside from maintaining stability and preventing matters from crossing the river, he likely would not have much ability to intervene further. As for the true monarch, who knows what level of cultivation he has reached? Now that the Hall Master of the Locust Soul Hall is dead, it is unclear upon whom this karmic consequence will fall. He asked, "Has there been any word from Wang Quan?" Li Jianqian silently shook his head. Seeing Li Ziming sink into deep thought and judging that the matters at hand had been settled, he quickly added, "Taoist Master, there is also some good news. We have also found traces of Father's whereabouts. He was seen at Purple Smoke Gates Market. At the time, we only knew that he was safe and residing in the Eastern Sea, which was a relief." Now that news of the Taoist Master's return has reached Zongquin Island, Zongquin has sent word back. Father was originally in seclusion around the Zongquin region, cultivating a secret art. He has now emerged from seclusion, and upon hearing of the Taoist Master's return, sent a message home. He is preparing NG to enter seclusion again, to break through to the Purple Mansion realm. These words finally caused Li Ziming's eyes to light up as he said, "At last, there is news of him." Li Xiaowei had not elaborated in the letter, but how could Li Ziming not understand the meaning? There was no need for Li Xiaowei to expose his whereabouts to the family. His intention was naturally to meet Li Ziming before entering seclusion. The Li family was no longer what it once was. Back then, Zhao Yuanxi had to labor bitterly to refine pills. Now, the provisions needed to push an immortal foundation into Shenyang could be fully prepared by Li Ziming. Moreover, the experience Li Xiaowei had gained from cultivating secret arts was itself extremely valuable. What was more, the two of them stood at the very core of the Li family. After being out of contact for so many years, a meeting was urgently needed. I should have suspected it earlier. The Eastern Sea is naturally the safest place for him. Moreover, Zongquan Island is the territory of that dragon son Dingjiao, and there are even islands belonging to our family. There could hardly be a better place. He thought it over carefully, as he calculated the risk of Cheng Xiao intercepting him midway. Although the current Li Ziming was no longer the Li Ziming who had just entered the Purple Mansion realm and knew little of combat, someone like Cheng Xiao would not underestimate him. Despite only having the immortal mirror for detection, no matter how great Cheng Xiao's divine abilities are or how precise his calculations may be, he will never manage to ambush me midway. Li Ziming did not hesitate. He took out another jade talisman and handed it to Li Zhongqian, speaking quietly, "I should have met the family members to celebrate the Purple Mansion realm formation, but this matter is urgent. I will immediately make a trip to the Eastern Sea. Traversing the Great Void will be quick, and I will return shortly. If there is any news, simply crush the jade talisman to notify me." Chapter 1360, Meeting I. Zongquan Island. The waters of the scarlet pristine sea shimmered with interwoven hues of blue and red, looking especially beautiful beneath the deep azure sky. Two fishing boats drifted quietly upon the waves, their pale yellow sails raised as they headed toward waters where seagulls gathered in flight. Radiant light gathered in the vault of the heavens, and a man clad in a white golden Taoist robe descended along the light before the grand formation. The island's residents lifted their heads, watching with curiosity. Zongquan Island had remained peaceful for many years, its people living and working in contentment. Relying on their ties to Huiyao, the fishermen even dared to sail nearby and fish freely, so they were not particularly fearful of cultivators. Li Ziming glanced over the scene and went straight into the main hall. An elderly man in white robes, his face covered in wrinkles and his beard and hair sparse, lay slumped over a desk with his head hanging low, seemingly exhausted to the extreme. Only when heavenly light appeared before the hall did he jerk awake. He leaped up, threw himself to the ground, trembling like chaff, and bowed, "Greetings to the one with divine ability. Greetings, Taoist master." This was Zhang Yan, who governed the area, a son of Diyang at the Qi cultivation realm. Now advanced in age, he had grown up on Zongquan Island and had experienced life without any protection. He held great reverence for high cultivators, let alone a Taoist master, and immediately knelt on the ground. Li Ziming merely took out the main family's command token from his sleeve, tossed it into his hand, and instructed, "Go and invite the heir." Zhang Yan hurriedly turned around, picked up a jade talisman from the desk and crushed it in one motion before kneeling back down. Li Ziming asked, "How is Zongquan faring these days?" Zhang Yan replied immediately, "Thanks to the main family's blessing, 2 promising seedlings for cultivation have emerged. They were sent to the lake to continue their training. We can only see whether one of them might be willing to return in a couple of years." Although Zongquan Island was much better off than before, it was still a desolate place compared to Moongay's Lake. Unless the lake sent direct lineage members to garrison it, no cultivator was willing to come here. In recent years, the few individuals with high innate ability were all sent to the Jade Court by the lake, and to this day they never spoke of returning. Those few were ashamed to mention Zongquan, and since the Li family had not publicly announced Zongquan Island, they simply continued cultivating at the lake. Li Ziming shook his head and replied, "Do not worry, they will all return." In truth, Zongquan Island was indeed safer than Moongay's Lake for Li Xiaowei. If a breakthrough were made here, Zongquan Island would inevitably undergo an earth-shaking transformation, and its spirit vein would be utterly incomparable to the past. That was why Li Ziming spoke those words. Who would have thought that Zhang Yan would misunderstand, hurriedly kowtowing in alarm as he said, Those words were not meant as reproach. Those children are all very good to the family." Li Ziming was momentarily stunned, then smiled and shook his head, not bringing up Li Xiaowei at all. He chatted casually, listening as Zhang Yan rambled on about how Li Yuanjiao had rescued Zongquan in those years past. At last, radiant light descended from the heavens and landed before the hall. The radiant light dispersed, transforming into a golden-eyed youth clad in gold and white scale armor, with a profound patterned jade bottle tied at his waist. When he walked into the hall, his eyes lit up as he saluted. "Minghuang greets the Taoist master. Congratulations to the Taoist master on the advancement of your divine ability." Li Ziming let out a breath of relief as he strode up to him. He shook his head and smiled as he said, "Look at you. Why be so polite? Come, come." Zhang Yan tactfully let himself out and closed the door, allowing the formation to seal the space. Li Ziming knew that Li Xiaowei must have scanned the area with the immortal mirror before approaching Zongqun, so he spoke freely inside. "Do not keep calling me Taoist master. You fought your way out from the lake and even killed Sidu Mo, removing that great menace. As for me, I was in a sorry state the entire time. If Cheng Xiao had not been intercepted midway, I would already have turned into a patch of heavenly light and scattered across the outer sea. It was a misfortune that turned into a blessing. After some turmoil outside, my injuries were healed. My cultivation did not fall too much, and I even obtained a purple mansion realm true fire and formed ties with 9 mounds." Li Xiaowei repeatedly said he would not dare. Even for him, seeing Li Ziming safe and sound, and seemingly having gained many benefits, finally put him at ease. He presented a jade box with both hands and replied, "The Taoist master is the one who preserved the family. This junior merely survived by fortune under your protection. I did not perform any rites or offerings, yet I presumptuously used the family's important treasure, the spirit sword. I ask for punishment." Li Ziming knew that Qing's sword lay inside. He gently accepted it and replied, "Nonsense." Li Xiaowei had not finished speaking. Only after Li Ziming accepted Qing's did he continue. As for Cheng Xiao being intercepted midway, it was Lady Qinghong who took action. Li Ziming never expected to hear Li Qinghong's name. His heart skipped a beat and filled with both shock and joy as he replied, Aunt Qinghong has already reached the Purple Mansion realm. No wonder that day saw unending torrential rain and ceaseless thunder. Cheng Xiao was so ruthless and formidable, yet she escaped unscathed. Is she of the Dragon Clan?" Li Xiaowei nodded and said softly, "Exactly so. In the Thunderdao Grotto heaven, she fought through duels, slaughtered all peers of thunder arts across the world, ascended to the summit, and after devouring thunder became a thunder body of the Dragon Clan. She and Dongfeng Heian are both Purple Mansion realm spirit cultivators. Unfortunately, she cannot move lightly. She has now claimed a sea beyond the Reef Sea, calling it the Lai Sea, and guards the thunder pool there. When the Taoist master fought Cheng Xiao along the way and passed through the outer sea, she intervened to help." Li Ziming did not know how to respond. He closed his eyes, slightly choked up, and said softly, "We can finally give an account to the old elder." News of Li Qinghong was undoubtedly the greatest piece of good news since he had reached the Purple Mansion realm. Li Xiaowei also smiled, giving Li Ziming some time to process it before lowering his voice. "Thinking back now, Dongfeng Heian formed ties with our family very early on. It is hard to say whether he already knew such a matter would arise in the future and sought to build good relations with his peers. After all, he shares longevity with the Dragon Monarch. Do not be fooled by how most of the Dragon Clan can command him. He carries many secrets." Li Ziming was startled and asked, "If that is the case, then the matter of devouring thunder involving the Dragon Clan and all the arrangements behind it means my aunt is already deeply involved and cannot stay out of it. No wonder she cannot contact the family. If our family were implicated in this, it would be a matter of family annihilation." Li Xiaowei's voice grew lower as he continued, "As for the great figure in Jiangbei, it is the founding emperor." "The founding emperor. Li Qianyuan." Li Xiaowei's expression was heavy as he recounted everything Dongfeng Lian had said, from beginning to end. Li Ziming listening, in utter shock, stunned for a long while before finally realizing the truth. He looked into the distance as he said, no wonder that despite all the troubles in Jiangnan, Tinglin still told me not to return. No wonder the great Ziyuqi temple told me not to interfere. It has nothing to do with any supreme Yang dominance at all. It is simply that my family's identity is troublesome." One matter after another surfaced in his mind, and a grave expression emerged on his face. Does the founding emperor truly have no consciousness? The bright Yang Dao places great emphasis on hierarchy and exalted bloodlines. Even without awareness, a dignified Golden Core realm cultivator should not be completely oblivious to the bloodline of their own descendants. Chen Yang also carries Li blood. His lineage is even quite close. When he went to the riverbank, the true monarch recognized him as a promising piece at a glance. Could it have been for this reason as well, a natural sense of affinity? Li Xiaowei frowned and replied, "If that is the case, then with all families watching, it may well become supporting evidence for those with ulterior motives." Li Ziming's thoughts grew increasingly tangled and complex, and he said quietly, "Our family must avoid suspicion. No wonder everyone I meet warns me not to get involved. At present, who knows how many Taoist masters and even true monarchs are keeping an eye on us.